Yeah, that's for 16.
Okay.
But
So it's called.
so we may not use this emergency management of 96, and that's fine if we don't. We can take it out, but I don't see.
Yeah.
That's what we were, we didn't know. It's been in there for several years, so we're kind of trying to say, yeah, what was that intention? But we don't.
It
know
could
about
have, could have been.
Okay.
Maybe. So I know the 96 number came up, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll let her in.
This is the 16 there, because that's kind of what we've collected, that's fine, I guess, so.
Yeah, so,
Well, we'll see. And like you say, if we don't, then.
Yeah, 600 extra.
I mean, yeah, exactly, yeah.
So,
We're not being recorded yet, right? Oh.
Just let me know when I start my little guy.
Are we ready? We can start the recording? Okay.
County saying just accept it. Accept it on this.
Okay, we want to welcome you to our budget meeting that is held on today, Wednesday, May 7th. We're happy to have Cami Moss, our city treasurer, here with us. And we also have Jared, our public works director, along with Councilmember Hill and Councilmember Wilcox, and we excuse Councilmember Maragoni and Fowers, and possibly Councilmember Northbrook might be joining us.
She's not.
She's not, okay, we want
That's her.
to, okay, we want to excuse her as well then. Okay, so, Cammie's here to review some things with us tonight. I know Bryce, you wanted to review, you said you had a few questions that we could go over some things. As we know, we have to be ready to approve our preliminary next Thursday. So,
I think actually Debbie had most of the questions. So I
Okay,
don't know what they are.
did she send you by chance any
I have
questions?
not seen any questions through email, and she did not. I was in the office till 3, so, well, 3:30.
So that was kind of my intent to have an extra meeting, was kind of facilitate her. And Wednesday night's not a good night for her. So, but I still have a few questions as well.
Okay.
I got several.
Good,
So-
okay, and I have Jared here to answer any questions, because he had also sent you an email concerning some road projects coming up. It did, yeah, it did. So we need to discuss that too. As we talked about it, and with Ryan Child, he said he felt like that if, that was something that if you didn't have any questions on it, it is money that's already budgeted, then Jared could go ahead, because some of these are time sensitive as far as you can explain that.
Duplicate it, so like this side will go.
Sorry, I'm just trying to pull everything out here.
And then just stop recording.
Hello, we also want to welcome Ryan Child, our accountant, who's here with us as well tonight, so.
You're gonna be here pretty late, it looks like 52 ounces.
That's for you, how to keep your weight for a long time.
That's right.
Brian, I don't know if you want a copy, there is a copy of what last we had to send out, and then
Yeah, that'd be great.
Sorry, I'm just trying to get the email to come up.
while she's doing that, then I'm just going to, so Ryan, at our last meeting, Councilmember Hill, I passed out a summary of the Sternus bids. Their money is in the budget. I went through and kind of compared the least bid was the Trophy Air as far as price, and everything looked fairly comparable. Debbie said that the Czech Business Bureau, I don't know if you had any concerns after going through that, Yeah, I think they all seem good, he sent me information as far as the warranty, furnaces are warranted. He said the labor always is for a year. He said sometimes if businesses tell you they're going to for longer than that, they maybe do, maybe don't, but it's kind of standard to do a year. So I would feel confident awarding him the bid, especially since it came in as a little bit, it seemed to be So,
You are getting a better air conditioning with the last, but it didn't second one.
so,
14.5 Sierra, 40,000, which is.
I think the 14.5, no one's at 13.5. And he was explaining to me if they said they were putting anything, it was something with the furnace, again, I'm not an expert, but he doesn't know how they would even fit it in our space in the room. He said he measured and we'd actually have to cut down like the coil part, even something to even fit it in. So he said if they really are quoting you something bigger than the I'm telling you, I don't know a lot about furnaces. Anyway, so
Usually the air conditioning goes on the outside building.
it does, except for the coil. He was talking about it. It has to do with the coil.
There's a little bit, and we're cooking about, they got. And then they don't. Got it all off the building. And they were doing that, right? You
They're still 12 years. They were,
Yeah. it's been a
they're
while.
2013.
12 years, yeah,
Yeah.
mine's ancient and.
You're
Yeah.
lucky then.
My old house, I never had any trouble with them. The new one, we've been out and worked on it several times. I don't think the new ones are as good as the old ones. Yeah.
They don't make nothing like they used
Well, there
to.
is still something too, he said with the Leon or whatever's in them, the government's changing them, and so if we get the old one and one said, let's do the old one and then tried it, but then he said if we can no longer get that, then coming up in the future it might be more expensive. But anyway, when Cammie's ready, we'll
I am ready.
do Cammie and then we can talk about it.
Let me get to where, sure.
We're just trying to get this done before it gets too hot, because those few hot days, it was really pretty hot in the.
You want to go for the show or you want me to? Okay, so I'll just kind of go through some of the highlights. Did you all get one of these if you want?
Since you killed the tree, well, that's-
Well, you know. I planned one too. for you. So, okay. So basically within the general fund, we're just kind of highlighting a few things throughout the budget. So within the general fund, we still have a Class C roads balance of 2.4 million and an unrestricted fund balance of 1.4. So we're in some good places with those restricted and unrestricted balances. We're 39% of the revenue. So we are approaching on that. Well, we have hit that state requirement that we can't be above 35%, but we can't be below 5% either. So we're probably going to amend the budget to allow us to transfer some more funds to capital projects. So just so that we can stay within that requirement. And so it's just shifting from one place to another. As part of the budget, we have included a 3% cost of living for consumer price index, which is right in line with what we've been seeing. And then we also included a merit increase of 2% for all employees, and then an additional 3% for any employees that are under $30 an hour. Now, how that is administered is up to you guys and how you want to, award that, or what requirements you want to have associated with that is up to you. It just means simply that you have up to that much that you could possibly give employees. And that's just basically a place in the budget to say, yes, you have an option to do that. But it does not mean that all employees will automatically receive that, or that you'll grant all employees that. That could be, however you guys want to administer that. And I would encourage you to look at that after we accept the budget on how you want to administer that. Instead of
So where did that come from in the beginning? Where did the idea originate from?
So it originated from, usually you see some type of a merit increase for employees. Most cities offer that. I'm not saying that all do, and depending on the year, it depends. Most of them will do the cost of living, of course, the COLA, but the merit, some do, some don't. Most cities do offer some type of a merit. There was a concern that maybe some of our employees weren't being paid as highly as maybe they should, or that we're going to be losing some of those lower end employees. So we said, okay, well, what if we implemented this option to give room? And that basically results in all employees having the option to at least have $1 an hour. And that's only an option. Some, of course, more, some, of course, less, but that is, of course, just, it's not written in stone, that's what they're going to get. It just gives that option within the budget. Does that make sense?
So was it just last year or 2 years ago? that we did huge increases across the board? Last year.
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't last year. I think it was probably 2, yeah,
Get them up.
To come up in
Yeah.
compliance with all these other cities is what we were told.
yeah.
We gave huge increases
Yeah.
2 years ago.
So the COLA increase of 3% comes, you asked where these come from. That comes from the Department of Workforce Services.
Mhm.
Right.
And then the merit, those increases have just been based on discussions and putting this together.
So a couple of ideas we had, like for instance, we would like Darren to have his license with the sewer. But it is quite an intensive test, so that could be a merit increase. If he's willing to study, go get that test, have that license, that could be a merit. We've also talked about having our city, or our public works having a CDL license. Some of them do have a CDL license, some don't. So we thought if we had, that could be a merit increase. So it's not that they would get a merit. So if we had that building there, we could say, okay, the city will have someone come here, train you, and you could get your CDL license. Along with that, a lot of times you used to have them sign something and say, okay, we've paid for you to get your CDL license, and you have to sign a contract that says you will stay working for the city for 3 years. If you don't, then you pay back what we paid for your training. So it's not necessarily like it would be a straight across the board, but it would at least give us, there's incentives.
Yeah,
because some things, even like we had two that became notary, received their notary. Well, with that, the state says if someone has a notary, it's like $1 an hour increase. Well, you could do that then, but if we don't build this in there, we really don't have any money that we could actually do some of these things that we think might be a plus for our employees.
I think we're kind of in a tight budget situation. And to just have a discussion about a potentially 8% increase in employees' wages seems like a lot of money that we shouldn't be spending, in my opinion. I mean, I'm just apples to oranges. My employees get 1.4% increase this year. And we're talking about 3 plus 5. So that's just my feeling. I don't know how we're gonna even administer merits. I don't know, Bryce, how you feel about merits, but it's hard to administer. Because we don't get day-to-day
Right, we don't.
with the employees.
Right. I think the only way, and I kind of agree with Ryan, maybe there's something not quite that big, but every employee, if we do go that route, every employee should have a path to get the merit, because you can't, if you
Yeah.
exclude one
Yeah,
and reward the other one, you're gonna lose more than we ever
Yeah.
tried. We're gonna defeat the purpose. But yeah, we are kind of in crunch time, but I don't know, maybe if we did something smaller and everyone had a path, and if they choose to do it, great, because it's gonna benefit the city. But if they don't do it, then we won't get it. But yeah, 8%, that's,
You guys like to propose a different number there?
Well, especially when 2 years ago, we did 10% raises.
yeah, it was like
9 to 12%.
was it that high?
it was pretty high. And that was just to kind of get them up to the,
To the
to
state.
the, yeah,
So
to
other cities.
right. Comparative, so.
So-
I think one of the reasons that area in the wage scale was targeted, it's when we need to hire a new employee like we're trying to now. To get someone qualified with some skills and bring something to the table, we're having to pay them more to get them, to get quality people. So then we figure out a way in the budget to pay them what we need to employ them. And go back and look, and now we've got 12-year veteran employees that are supervisors that don't make that much money.
Yeah.
Yet if you don't pay what it takes to get them, you don't get them.
So,
That's kind of one of the drivers in targeting that area.
right.
Mhm.
And I remember when we did implement the utility tax, that was pretty much for the sole reason for employees. It wasn't really, there was a place for the increase in employees. So in my mind, those funds are kind of, in a sense, earmarked for them and not other purposes other than my 5% emergency fund.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I mean, we definitely could decrease it. I mean, we're not opposed to changing it, but it's just the concern of, you know, if you have to budget something, we have to
Sure.
have something budgeted. If we're going to do those possible increases, you know, we said, well, realistically, probably $1 is the minimum we would probably, you know, or maybe you'd only do 50 cents, but we were just trying to kind of come up with something that gave about $1 increase.
So would that 5% equal $1? Like,
It's
Or-
really close to $1, yeah. It just depends upon,
Sorry.
yeah, it depends on the employee.
Would like a 3% COLA and a 3% up to a 3% merit for all employees? Does that feel better
Oh, we
or
can
just
certainly vote.
scratch the 3% on the lower wage earners? What feels
If-
good to you
If
guys?
I had my choice, I would sooner do that even, because I would like to see. So, you know, supervisors can sit down, because just like I mentioned with them not having their CDLs, we've gotten by okay without them having them. Maybe some employees don't need them, but maybe other employees do. And I think that could be an incentive that hey, we care enough about you, we want to get you trained. And maybe there's other things we could do as far as that maybe, yeah, like you said, doing the 3 and the 3.
We do the 3 and 3.
I'm trying to see what works, see how it comes
Okay.
out in the wash.
Okay, so let's change that, yeah. I mean, that's great.
And then
'Cause-
we'd have to come up with how we administer it.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not saying that you're automatically giving them merit. Like they were saying, you want them to have some goal or something that
Yes.
makes them earn it.
But they
So,
should have that. If they choose.
exactly. Yeah, it should be, I agree.
So
you
we'll,
know,
we'll change the numbers so that it's 3% COLA and 3% merit.
Well,
Yeah.
like Jared said, there's even certifications for spraying. I mean, there's others, not saying everybody across the board does the same. Everybody maybe doesn't want their CDLA, like they maybe don't. But maybe we need some that do, because we do in order to drive our trucks, but maybe there's other things. But if we don't have anything built in there, we can't even call them in and say, hey, what, you know, these are some, what would you be interested in?
And maybe see what they think too.
Yeah.
Yeah, tailor the goal that gets them to their merit per employee based on what they do.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll definitely adjust that, no problem at all. And then we did add an additional employee to the budget for the sewer as requested. That total cost, we're looking about 94. That includes worst case scenario. So that's if an employee came in and had, you know, family coverage, health insurance. I mean, I did the worst case to make sure we had enough there. If we don't use it, great, we don't spend it. You know, it's not like we're just gonna go do additional just because it's there. It's, but we have to budget for worst case. And then there's an open position in highway department. And of course, we've just kept the same wage as the previous employee to include that in the budget.
That's not a replace, that's a replacement. right?
Yeah,
No,
it's a replacement and
new.
not a new position, yeah. Okay, and then we've, of course, like we said, we went through the employees, reallocated what their time was where. Because it had not been done for many, many years. So starting July 1st, I'm gonna go in and make sure the allocations are the way that Jared and Sherry and I and sat down and said, okay, this is where the employees really, their time is at. And part of that is relating to breaking out those other enterprise funds as well. So. Okay, and then on the general fund revenues, we budgeted revenues for about 4 million. The tax increase is our budgeted very low because we're definitely concerned about the economy. You know, we don't think there's gonna be a lot of growth and we would rather err on the safe side on that. So we, you know, we aren't anticipating a lot of growth. Estimated that we'll receive about 550,000, sorry, in Class C roads funding. And then we've also been awarded a $90,000 grant for the preparation of the up-to-date transportation impact study. And we also have been, or we're working on getting the grant for the park impact study, which will be 82.4.
And the 90,000 one was more reviewing the general plan and commercial standards. Necessarily not the transportation impact, because that
Okay.
transportation impact study was the one that they approved at the last city council meeting, and Taylor said that's already been paid for. That was paid for back when they started that, when Tracy Allen started it. So that study's already been
The
paid for.
impact fee study's done.
The traffic, yeah, that's
So-
what that was, wasn't it?
And
Jared?
who will
That
be
was on page-
The transportation master plans done, they haven't done the impact fee analysis yet.
Okay, so I guess they're just.
Cause that'll cost a chunk of money,
Yeah, well,
but we don't have a grant for that one. You're right, okay.
No,
So the 90,000 is just the general plans.
So,
and commercial standard.
subsequent question on this 90,000, I thought it was 100. And then we didn't discuss it in city, it was not on the agenda on city council, so what actually is that? Where's the 100? I thought it was 100.
So that the grant was for 100,000, but the city's match is 10.
So
So
have we
they-
paid, have
they-
we paid the 10 already?
No, so they give us 90,000 and the city's match is 10. And then Taylor said he thought part of what they do in this study could be used towards one of the impact studies, but I don't remember right off now which one he said.
So what is this grant actually for and what strings are attached?
Okay, so the
What's
only,
required of us?
the only requirement of us is our match is the 10,000. And so what they're going to do is come in, there's
Who's
an
they?
RFP, this was through the Wasatch Front Regional Council that the grant was applied for. So they will come in, they will do an RFP to decide who is going to do this study. So that's not, they'll do the RFP, then we decide on whichever company we want to do it. They'll come in and it'll again, I think, be somewhat of like open houses where they'll go
So
through
is
and
this,
say.
are you talking about opening the general plan and redoing that? or
No,
what?
it's
What?
just reviewing if there's any updates that need to be made and it's specifically to develop some commercial standards. Because we've never had really anything commercial here, it would actually be to develop some commercial standards. For example, if you go to do a business in West Haven, they tell you it can only be these colors, it has to be so much. We don't have any of that because we've never done it. So it would be those type of things that they would do, yeah. So no, it's nearly not enough to redo but it's just saying, okay, because if you go for a general plan, let's say every year we were supposed to have reviewed but we really haven't. But this will give us the ability to be able to do that. Yeah,
So how did we get this money? Did we apply for it? Did we
it was
just
a.
follow that? What
Yeah.
happened?
Well, kind of both. It was an applied for grant. They came to the city and we had met with them and Taylor, and it was one that they applied for. And so with grants, you really never know if you're going to get them or not. And then they picked us. There was only a few cities in the state that they picked and we happened to be one of them.
So that actually came to us.
They actually, yeah, it was approached us. But I think it's because too, we're in a opportunity in a city that's growing and we really, our general plan is really good, but still has some things that maybe need to be updated. And it's been a few years, so. You know.
I got reading the WFRC website,
Oh, yeah.
the grant,
Okay.
or the conditions of this grant. And some of the language I don't know if I agree with it or not. I mean, just the last sentence says, the city will update its zoning and future land use maps for clear guidance toward the future it wants. You know, is that a buy-off or a trade-off for this money? That
Well,
we have, or tied to do all this stuff in this paragraph?
so I certainly think that's something we look at, whether we change or not. Isn't this just an opportunity for us to look at them and see if it's things that we feel like need to be changed or not need to
Well,
be changed?
That's a requirement already, to look at the general plan every couple of years and
Yeah.
look at it.
But,
But I just don't want to tag some chunk of money.
Mhm.
It says, oh, here's the money, now you have to do
Yeah.
this.
No, it's not going to be a requirement that we have to have any certain zoning. It's going to be that they're going to come in and look at it and say, hey, it's been now 4 years, almost 5 since you did your start of the general plan. Is there anything you think needs to be updated? They don't. Currently, in Wasatch Front Regional Council doesn't have that authority anyway. But currently, even the state is not dictating that we have to have a certain zoning in our cities. That maybe in the future might come, but it isn't yet. There weren't any bills passed that's requiring us to have any certain zoning. That's just giving us the opportunity, which I thought was good, because every time we go through the general plan, and it really does, we have a really strict, every year we'll do this, but we really haven't gone through and really evaluated stuff.
So that money can be used for one of these impact studies. Is what we're talking.
Well, he
It
said,
sounds like it will decrease the
yeah,
cost of one
yeah,
of
I
them
don't
if
think
we
it'll
do
be an
that.
entire one.
So if
but-
you do A, it will decrease B,
Yeah,
but if you don't do A, B stays up here.
That's in theory though.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, so back to the impact studies. I don't know about you, Bryce, but I'm still in the dark about why we've been mandated to do $300,000 worth of impact studies. Where did that come from? Who mandated it? Why do we have to do it? What's the consequences for not doing it? I don't feel like I've ever been told any of that. I don't know what you.
I was just told we can't charge an impact fee if you don't have a study. That's just what I've been told. So
It
I
costs
don't know.
$100,000 to figure out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
Money grant.
I mean, we all were like,
And so Taylor last time brought in and had the comparisons of what it was. So like, for instance, what was I actually had him send that to me. And
It looked like from his numbers, we could get 3 of them for about. If in fact, because one was 150, but Tracy Allen had done about half the work maybe.
yeah,
So around 250-ish. Yeah, all, I think is what I remember.
so the sewer impact study was 150,000, but he said that Tracy, they'd already done about half of it.
Yeah.
So that would be about 75,000. The problem is right now is the last time it was updated was in 2022. And he also had a slide, which I'd have to go to another page that he showed that the comparison. So if we don't have the impact study done, just like Tommy said, we can't charge fees. The state requires you to say, this is what the impact is before we can charge those fees.
But we already charged for pursuing that, do you know?
Yes,
Yeah.
but in 3 years, has it changed? Like, has the impact changed?
And even the rules changed since we originally did that, but our current one's based on debt service for the sewer system. So if we build a new one, say for Terra Strata, that will have to have its own impact fee study and analysis done to determine what the impact fee is for that, like we did on Rawson Ranch. And they're all a little bit different. They all have to be based on costs of infrastructure. And can't be a profit making. Basically, they can pay for infrastructure that's in our impact fee plan. Or debt service. That we don't make any money out, but it is.
So the last impact fee study for sewer was completed in 2022.
And I don't even know if it was completed in it's just last updated. And I think that's probably what Tracy was working on, which might have been part of the same.
Well, the 2022 one would have been Rawson Ranch. And that only did that area. This would be citywide.
Because I was under the impression it was much older than that.
Mhm.
Yeah, the one for the vacuum sewer was done when we built with this.
15 years ago or so.
17.
17.
And the idea of that is that you have a new developer, build something, they need to pay whatever the impact is on your system. So by not having it up to date, you're collecting the fees that it would have been 15 years ago, when really it's at this price today.
But that would be for the system that's already in place, right?
Yes.
We already know what those costs are.
Some of this system is going to grow as the demand grows, so we may have in our impact fee plan that we need to add an additional force main or add an additional pump that's already planned for in the station as we reach a certain level. Those would be eligible as long as they're in our plan.
Yeah, that's the catch. Those expenditures have to be inside that plan. In order to be impact fee eligible, to be able to use that money for various purposes.
So then he showed the parks one on this, and the parks, that's what he's applied for a grant for. And it was $88,000, but they will pay 80%. So if we get this grant, our portion would be 17,600. That was last updated in 2003. So we know those aren't probably accurate figures.
Yeah, I know that one valued land, residential land at like 20,000 an acre. I don't know exact, 25 maybe, but yeah, it's
So we
really
do
outdated.
We do collect that fee currently as well, based on.
Yes.
Yeah.
2003 numbers.
Numbers, yeah.
The storm drain plan, we don't have an impact fee for it all. And there's not a grant right as of today that he knows of. And so the storm drain plan for impact was 120,000. So that was one that is the complete amount, because like I said, we don't. And then the transportation plan, that was the one that was already paid for. This was on his slide as well. And then the general plan update commercial standards was the one we paid 10,000.
Sure. Who was the parking back fee grant from? Is that a state
It's
agency?
the Utah Outdoor Recreation. And it is one that they're giving to do design again, and it'll help you with that impact. It would cover that. But again,
It'd be great to get that one.
I know, you apply and you don't know. I mean, we're hoping, and we've been pretty successful so far with grants.
Is there a grant for the storm drain that even exists that you can apply for, or no?
We not one that we know of. And the problem too with that, and Jared can explain this better, is we just had an audit. We've got to have a storm drain plan.
We just got our findings back, but I read the cover letter. It's a big document. They're gonna have things that we need to fix for sure.
From what I've heard, nobody goes through that without all that.
Yeah. Another neighboring city, they said it was good and they had 50 findings.
But the problem is we don't have these studies done, and I know it seems like a lot of money, and we're not, no one is mandating to do us, but then it's mandated, so we can't have an impact fee if we don't have a study. We don't have a road impact fee, so we're not collecting money. So when we go to do some of these projects, we don't have money put aside because we haven't been collecting it, which we really probably should have, just like that one the sewer pipe, I was mentioning to you, we should have probably been charging each one of those houses an impact fee. But we didn't, we've got to from now on. So if we don't, when it comes down to it, we don't have the money collected to pay.
So here's what I struggle with.
Okay.
We're raising the sewer rates, we're raising the garbage rates, we're raising the storm drain rates, all based off of paying for impact fee studies. On the storm, on the storm drain, we are.
So on the
No.
storm drain, we actually planned that it would go deficit in the balance for to not cover that. We didn't increase based on that.
So the impact fee study is being paid with. already.
Not with the rate increase.
Well, the garbage is because.
Yeah.
Sewer is because the sewer.
Yes.
Yeah,
The storm drain will pay
so if
more because of this impact.
No,
So,
no,
it's
this
a bit of an interesting beast because takes a lot of infrastructure to drain the city, but there's no revenue source, there's not a water bill or a sewer bill associated with that other than this fee. And there's just as much infrastructure, and a lot of ours is really aged. And the new stuff we're getting in the subdivisions is good, but there's all these missing links between those that need to be upgraded and taken care of, and there's really no revenue source. The other thing I would say about that, in my world, we separate storm drain from storm water. And the stormwater quality is more like meeting the state and the federal government's criteria. To keep the water clean, the Clean Water Act is what we're trying to achieve, the rules and regulations they have for us. Storm drain is the actual facility. And I think they're kind of getting on together now. We haven't done that in the past. I'm not saying that's wrong or bad. It's just now we're lumping them together. But there really is no funding source for that other than.
Well, I can tell
So-
you this, when did we start the storm water fee? 5 years ago, 6 years ago? Up until then, we had share fund. That's what,
Oh, I thought that was the insurance, sorry.
General fund.
right.
So on page 15 and 16 here of the budget,
Trying to see how I. can-
page 15 shows the revenue in stormwater, which have been calculated to be sufficient to approximately cover the deficit that would exist, except for impact fee study. You'll notice on the bottom of page 16, all the way that bottom right corner, there's an expected decrease in fund balance of 116,470. And you'll notice under the expenses, there's an impact fee study of 120,000. So the storm drain user fee is not being used to pay for that.
We're just going to hold.
You're spending money we've
We're
already
losing
got.
money because of the events.
But would you rather have to? I mean, okay,
There
so
is no storm impact fee
no,
revenue right now. right?
for stormwater, so you're basically allowing developers to put in and not pay their portion. And that's fine if that's the decision you wanna make.
Once we spend that 120, we'll start collecting it.
Yeah.
And this
Mhm.
number
Yeah,
would hopefully be a positive.
Yeah. yeah.
Yeah,
And
so
so then
basically
we're
we
gonna
have
have
no
matches.
revenue source for fund storm drain. In order to get one, we either gotta raise taxes and pay that out of the general fund. Or go this other route, but if we go the other route, we have to have the plan and analysis before we can charge it.
So the two things I want to make sure that the city is. But I wouldn't want to see happen. One is your park impact fee study, I'll use that for example, it's over 20 years old. So its calculated cost or impact on the city is really low compared to what it really is. So the money you're bringing in doesn't cover the impact. So the difference would have to be made up with property taxes or something like that from the city, from the users, citizens. And the other thing is if you have a project that can come online, like a nice park, 5 acres or something like that. If it's not on that study, you can't use the park impact fees to buy it. So it'd be kind of tragedy to be accumulating those funds and not being able to take advantage of that purchase.
That's the plan part of it, the IFP, we have to have what we wanna do with the money we're gonna collect in a plan. And prioritize it and chip away at it.
I don't afford these categories.
All impact fees, unless it's for debt service.
So I wonder if we can look into the sewer impact fee study a little bit more to see when that becomes, is that necessary right now? Is there the new people that are coming in are paying impact for the system that's already here, that we're already paying debt on, right?
But there's a few that are having to put some new lines in, that's what.
I personally think it's necessary because we're charging the vacuum sewer impact fee to everybody and they're not all on a vacuum sewer.
Oh, I see,
I think we need to have it
yeah,
for the impact they're actually creating. And so it's not gonna be a complete redo, but it will be a update that'll fix it.
So then they,
No,
if we're collecting money that we're not gonna collect after the impact fee study.
I'm sure that
And-
it'll
and
make it
leave it
cheaper
alone.
if the impact.
It's
The
gonna go
study
up.
isn't gonna be able to decrease, but I don't think it's legal. I think when we did it. The rules have changed in that 20 years or 15 years, whatever we're talking about, and we need to be compliant with the law. We don't wanna collect money we're not entitled to collect.
And we don't know how in the future there will be more lift stations, like for example, that property that's there east of Sinclair. If ever he develops that, he's gonna put in a lift station. Well, if he puts in that lift station, we don't have that impact fee in place to say, I mean, we do, but it would be the old. We wouldn't have it in there to say, okay, for all these homes you put in, this is what you're going to have to pay. Or whether it's a commercial development or those houses that go in East Hooper, there will be a lift station, you know, there, whether for commercial houses or houses, period. Then we don't have anything in our impacts fee say to say, okay, this is what you need to pay. And there could be others that come, we don't know, like they talked about here on 5900, possibly putting in a new lift station for their development.
And each new facility will require a new IFP and. A new IFB, so. But they're not this in depth, like Ross and Ranch, I don't remember what that cost, but it wasn't. The whole city, looking at the whole city, but.
So each one of these impact fee studies requires an RFP. Somebody bid separately on them.
I don't know about the RFP, you just have to have the plan and the analysis.
So do we take bids for these, or we just say, here you go, JB, charge us what you want, let's bid them? I mean.
It's the challenge, I think, is you may have someone. I don't know, you probably wanna evaluate that because they have all the survey data, all of the system data. For someone to, not saying they can't do it, but to go out and recreate. All the plans it would take that UB already has.
And their bid's gonna be higher.
Their bid's gonna be higher or. Yeah, we should be able to. Get the best price from JUB, they already have most of the information.
Yeah. But it sounds like you still should bid them though, right? If it's over that, you know, it's definitely over 25 grand and it's, I don't know if it's considered a service, or I would think so. And not that, yeah, I think JUB does have, they probably would be, but.
There is another, and you may know about it, there's another financial component that they don't actually do, it has to be a. You might know the terminology, but a financial. Group has to do that part of the work on all of those.
So in this budget, Cammy, do you have? These impact fees, not impact fees, but impact studies in here?
Yes, as of right now, they are in there, yes. And, you know. If they end up being less, fantastic, we don't send that, right, that's better. You know, save that money, but
most of the park impact fee study would be paid by the grant, right? So that's a pretty simple answer there.
Yeah.
that makes sense. I know, it's frustrating that you have to spend money to,
$500,000 to recoup. $1 million.
Yeah.
But you have to spend a ton of money to collect money.
Yeah.
Or continue to.
Well, number one place to live, right?
Oh, yeah.
For the third year in a row.
I know, what can we do? Doesn't. So. Okay, and then we have been awarded that $50,000 grant for the tomato days. if you're aware of that. Expenditures for the general fund, with the transportation grant of 90,000, the city is required to spend 10,000 of their own, which we just talked about. So there, you'll see that 100,000 expense, you'll see the revenue of 90,000. Let's see, without the $100,000 transportation study expense, this department actually does cut spending by about 67,000. So that's
That's
definitely,
the general government department. Is that what it's called?
yeah,
Okay.
the general government, so your administration department. Sorry. Your public safety has increased by 146,000. Unfortunately, we all know that's just going to continue more than likely. So this is just the beginning of, I'm afraid of that.
You're talking
Sheriff.
sheriff.
Sure,
Okay.
yeah.
So what is the percentage we pay? You know, is it 50/50? Based on calls versus population? It was
Yeah.
60/40. I just, hopefully they maintain that for us, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Lieutenant Slater's texted me, call me or. We had quite a few calls.
Does that include that?
Along with 6% of the state,
Yeah.
That's also your animal control. but
they don't go for it.
that was in- All they gotta do is park on my street. and
City's
get
road on there. They're not gonna help us out when they're getting a better end of the stick.
But if it's, I mean, that's your proposed increase, but it could come in less or it's that's the number.
That's what they've already told us, so we just barely had a meeting. And I took a shot of it and it showed our population, this was what was based on November 24, 9,369. And we had a total from 23 to 24, they call them priority 1 and 2, there was 487 calls. All other were 2,952 calls. And so the budget for 25-26 is 746,381. They didn't break it down according to population or calls. And Hooper we are one of the largest compared to West Haven. That's in that, we're larger than most of the other cities, we're smaller than West Haven.
Larger as far as square.
Population, no, as far as population. You go through our population, West Haven has more than us. And we are the next biggest. So there's West Haven is the largest with 24,000, Hooper were second with 9,369. And then Washington Terrace is next and then they all go down. So population wise, we're the second to the largest. But then they also have depending on. No,
Say
No.
that includes Fremont Island,
That's not
and there's
fair.
no calls up there.
Yeah. Well.
they project,
That's it.
if they get 10 more sheriffs, the projected then for next year, ours goes to 908,638. If they end up with 20 more, our cost will go up to 1,070,895
More.
officers. Because they're
saying they're short staffed.
Yeah, they're trying to get more officers. So this is what it is now, and it will go from 746 at least, probably up to the 908,000. But, you know,
What it would cost to have your own police protection, right? You need cooperation with the.
yeah, we
You almost
Previous
forgot about this.
administrations have looked into that and it's awfully costly. And you still have to have the county for jail and court and a bunch of other things, so you don't completely eliminate the county bill.
Washington Terrace had their own and they said they couldn't do it as cheap as they could be with the sheriff. West Haven, one of the council members asked me just the other day, hey, how do you feel? And he said they've looked at it. Even West Haven couldn't
They looked
afford
at
to
it.
do their own.
Yeah.
And if they did, possibly Hooper joining with them, but we can't afford. I mean, that's a lot of money, but you think of everything you have to have.
Sure, that was it. I didn't say that. But they're on their own, they call it. It's
It'd be nice if they would assess their own, cause I mean, realistically. I mean. Cities do property tax increases and say it's just for a police officer. And we may very well have to, this is an increase just for the police to cover that.
Welcome to TNT.
Yep. Dynamite. So. Recreation and community events, the expenses have been broken out into more detail this year. We've tried to give more information. Of course, we have the $50 or $50,000 tomato day grant. And that's accounted for. We also have the $16,000 utility tax.
That's on page 5, budget, right? Where the recreation and community events are broken out.
Yeah. So in the past, we have had one account that kind of hit the Halloween haunt, the Easter egg and the health fair and stuff. So we've tried to kind of allocate that out more and take that to each individual thing instead of just as a group. And that was previously, I believe, in the community, what we decided. was that.
Community events and
That's
education.
what I was thinking.
It used to say 16,500. And it was all kind of lumped. And then together.
So we kind of tried to give additional detail on that department. Your highways. There are 1.5 in Class C roads that we budgeted to use. Of course, that is all restricted funds. We feel like we can use that for some major increases in replacements and infrastructure increases in the parks or in the roads department, sorry.
So can, on the surface, so that 16,000, that's just budgeted, that's not collected.
Yeah,
So that 96 is probably from this year.
probably. That's what I'm
Yeah.
guessing, but where I didn't do the budget, it's hard for me to know for sure.
That's
So
what
we
that
could
is.
probably cut that 96.
Well, if it's in there, because I know there's
Mhm.
some items that Dave Harris wants to get for the city,
Okay,
so.
so maybe we need to leave it in
Yeah,
there
we
this
could
year.
leave it until.
Okay.
Yeah, I can talk to him and he can present his ideas to the city council.
Oh, yeah.
Go from there. So,
Yeah.
It would be good to get some of those supplies too.
Yeah,
I think
Yeah.
that's a really good idea.
So let's. Okay, so yeah, let's maybe leave that alone. Then and not cut that, but just understand that, you know. The council's gonna maybe look at that in detail before it's spent a little bit more. Okay, so we talked about the highways. The next slide. With the classy roads, we're looking at some crack seal, surface maintenance, overlay, potholes, patching, striping, signage, snow removal equipment, engineering, and your vehicle maintenance. That Jared has presented.
Thank you for that. Yeah. For that,
Was there a question about the current year with respect to Class C roads that we have a discussion on?
You know, I think you were wondering about the expense, what we asked the other day.
Yeah.
And you just need to basically throw it past the council.
Yeah, and we just need to know that that's good to move forward there. The only real urgent part of it is the crack seal. We want to get the crack sealed before they heat, the asphalt heats up and closes the cracks, so they want to get going. soon. You guys are okay with that plan that I sent out? Well, they're ready to go. I think the rest is pretty straightforward. We're gonna juggle a couple of those funds amongst each other and then do the same in the next year. We won't go over budget as a total. We'll stay in budget, and it's a state contract award. He actually is gonna beat that price for us, so I feel comfortable with that.
And that'll help with some of those roads. So, okay, then also we've got the parks, we've kept those pretty similar. But we have allocated part of the wages to the cemetery just because we wanted to add that additional section. to kind of give us some additional information on the cemetery. Help us see more of what we're spending on the cemetery as far as maintenance and what's being required of that. So we've added that additional section.
I mean, we've explained to them a little bit, not that we want to do this year, but about having like that perpetual. Explain that.
So, and it, you know, it just depends on the entity or whatever, but a lot of times with cemeteries, you'll run out of area that you can actually bury people, so then you don't have funds for that anymore. So the idea is that every time you bury somebody, you collect a perpetual care fee. And the idea is that when that cemetery is completely built out, then there's a corpus of money there that you only spend the interest on that, but that is building money so that that cemetery can be maintained throughout the years. The idea being that maybe, you know, right now, it's fine that we're using, you know, property tax money to maintain that cemetery, but we're getting a lot of people from like Roy and Clinton and other places, and your citizens are paying for the maintenance of that, which, you know, that's fine to an extent, but at what point do we need to collect that fee? And some cities will say, well, we're just gonna collect that fee for anybody that's not a resident, if we still allow non-residents to come in. Or some say, we're just gonna collect a X amount across the board. You know, there's various ways to do that, but the idea is that you have a corpus of money that the interest helps to maintain that cemetery once it's built.
So do we implement that in our fee schedule discussion?
Yeah,
I
I
would
would think
in-
so, because that's why I asked Cammy to break out the cemetery, because when we go through the fee schedule, we really have never had any idea, is the cemetery self-maintaining? And it's okay, I think, for taxpayer money to help pay to a point, but we've never known because it's all been lumped together. And we do have to have an employee that takes care of the cemetery. We do have to charge for it, and that's why we charge for our plots, but again, we don't know, are we charging enough or are we not?
I think either way, we want to know if we're
We
gonna
wanna know.
subsidize it with general fund, that's up
Yes.
to the council, but we should know how much we are.
That's what someone said.
Yeah,
Like how much Sharon talking about.
I would survey other cities and other cemeteries. I mean, even your other cemeteries have it. Not even a cemetery that's owned by a city, they have it at other cemeteries. I know, you know, my family's all on Bountiful, not at the Bountiful Cemetery, but the one up on the hill on Lakeview. Well, they paid a perpetual care fee when they bought the plot. Knowing that once that's filled out, that funding is what's going to maintain that, you know, because you don't want a cemetery, you know, that has weeds and overgrown and stuff. You've got people mad now. Wait till then, you know, so having that perpetual care fund helps to just make sure that there is a corpus there to help maintain that.
It's very long-term thing.
Mhm.
It takes a
It
long
is.
time to build up any money there.
yeah.
Yeah,
That
it
the
is.
interest would be significant enough to operate it, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
and some places will say, well, okay, we make 5% interest, we're gonna keep 3% of that to increase that corpus so that as it grows, you know, we continue to have, that cost of living goes up, that also supplements that. But the idea is that we have some funds set aside long-term to care for the facility. So.
Or if we even needed to buy some additional land to
Mhm.
add on to the cemetery, if we had this fund, like Cammy said, then we could be saving towards that. But if sometime a piece came available next to the cemetery, because we know, for example, like Roy Cemetery is full. And they've not bought any additional land for a cemetery. Well, we don't want to do that. We want to be planning far enough in advance that we have a fund to pay for that.
Okay, that's a thought process on that.
I don't mind being buried in back behind the house.
Yeah.
My dad wants down that house. My dad's like, that house works. Okay, anyways, let me go back here. So we talked about that, plus so we've allocated some of the expenses to, for the employees to the cemetery as well as part of the reallocation consideration. And then, of course, the roof on the cemetery building is, I guess, in dire need of being replaced, I'm being told. So we have accounted for just re-roofing that.
Is that, 40, is that 6125 on page 9? Is that the $10,000? Is that what that is?
No,
Isn't it?
no, that
$10,000.
$10,000 is to redo the pipe to put a pressurized sprinkling system.
Yeah. The
Because-
15, it was the re-roof.
On 1070. Cemetery expense in 1070.
I thought we said it was like about 12 to 15.
I don't remember.
15,000.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. That's right. That 10,000 was because we also have to pressurize that system in the cemetery for the water.
Okay.
They said we have to do
While we're
that.
On the subject of the cemetery,
Uh-huh.
I reached out to Jared today, I continue to have multiple people complain about the speeding. And the traffic that goes on in the cemetery late at night. And we need to do something, whether it's speed bumps or spikes, whatever
I
it is.
bet if you wrote a few tickets, if you think about it, it's the same people.
I'm not gonna plan on enforcement because we know it's a fallacy. So. What's the possibility of doing some speed bumps like those plastic rubber ones you see? Some places that you just stick down and anchor them in the asphalt.
We can do them. My opinion, the kids nowadays, that bump isn't gonna bother. And there's a great big bump there from them putting the secondary water meter in it that don't slow them down apparently. But they'll go off the road in mud puddles to splash gravel all over the place. I don't think it's speed bumps, change their mind. But
So what's gonna fix it?
Did we have cameras?
I asked the guys and they said they don't see them very often. They said that once in a while a car will go through, but they haven't seen anybody speeding. Now, I don't know what happens at night.
It's primarily at night.
I think we could probably, there, it does say on the sign that it's not a through street and that it's 10 miles an hour.
I don't.
As far as the camera, yes, we did get a bid for the camera, but you put it on the building in the front and where they're speeding through the back, it's not going, because
Can't see 'em.
There's that dip.
it's not, I mean, it did go up so high, but
It
we
did
don't
go
know.
so high or so far, and it did have license
So
plate
you
recognition as
know
well.
where You're going. I don't know why you go west through there. Where are you going?
Someone's got a trail cam on the fence, you see that? That is, I drove, it's decompliance, I just went on a little trip and there's a trail cam out there, so I don't know.
Did he get license plate numbers off the?
I don't know, I don't know whose it is, you probably could,
The sheriff's office, they do have signs that snap pictures of license plates.
yeah.
So as you're driving into town or out of town, I think it's if you're driving into town, they snap a picture and they know who's there. So if they're looking for somebody in Layton and they drive into Hooper, they know that they're here. I don't know, maybe something like that could be posted up at the cemetery, but it might be kind of costly.
Yeah, I know those cameras somewhere.
So if we install cameras at cemetery, can we put in not just the one on the building that sees this far, but one on the backside? That sees from east to west.
You'd have to have another like wireless internet modem, electricity, all that in the very back. Just added camera expense. I'm sure they could get it done.
How much she said. It's probably the price.
We have those bids. I have it here for the, that you have the.
We have had it gated before, but then it kind of defeats the purpose of having that so that the people can come from the other direction. It's like you punish the people that want to use it correctly as well.
We've had it given on the east side.
Yeah,
Did you get it?
no, we took it out.
There was that one. Yeah.
You're right, probably a certain group, yes.
Yeah, I don't
If
know.
we could catch them.
Why would you go west through there? There's nowhere to go. If you're having to go on to that neighbors, but that's gonna be rare.
No, I'm gonna
They're
go
just-
fast.
They're just joining.
That's exactly what they're doing down my street, and I got oil marks now, cause they're
Yeah,
spending.
I mean, I don't, I know.
Oh, that right in front of my house.
Enforcement, but I bet if they went there one night, and got 2 or 3 tickets in the streets and costs.
Mhm. Yeah, if we could get the cops over that one night, it's
Where do you
just
live? Which,
5,100.
are you on?
There's an oil field right in my house, then there's a valley. It's pretty bad. We
They
didn't.
said maybe they could turn it and catch the road. That road that runs like the side of the canal,
Oh, yeah.
but, and maybe it could go a little further, but that's kind of what he's estimating.
So this is the only view the camera's gonna get? So what are we trying to look at?
Like, that's just
I
a
think
generic
that's-
angle, so he could
Based on
angle.
my experience with cameras, I bought 3 sets at my house. You show them to the sheriff's office and they're like, yeah, do you know? Oil? And I'm like, no, and they said, neither do we.
Well, that's the hard thing with the cemetery because it is so big. Unless if you have a motion one or something that would, yeah.
Right,
Mhm.
you think you have a
Okay, so-
camera here, from here, and here.
I'm sure like Jamie said, they probably could, they just.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I don't even know.
and we can request the sheriff to, if we knew, like, if we think it's more weekends, I mean, we could, but again, like I asked them, because they're short staffed, we have them sit there and then there's another emergency that happens. And they're,
Depending on that, say you left.
I've asked them to come down my street.
Well, we got bits. Let's sit camp out there and. Yeah.
well, maybe that's
exactly.
fine too, has that truck camera, Bryce.
We might do that, yeah.
Who has that truck camera? Maybe we could find who has that and what it will pick up.
I got a couple you could buy, just go stick on the
maybe-
octagon building. and-
Go down there and stand in front of it and say, hey, please call Jared at the city. Checks it. I have no idea who's, I just drove past and I said, there's a truck. here."
But yeah, you can stick a
It could
couple.
be the fruit. That it's, yeah, sends the email.
Yeah, I responded back to him and told him, you know, it's really hard to do the gate and cameras, but it won't show if they're back there and.
So are those, bids or any in the budget, or are they not?
We didn't do any
Get
cameras,
'em.
but we could, but we thought probably the first place to start would be the office and probably the shop. And then we thought, and he bid them for for the sewer buildings, because if anybody ever broke in there, it caused terrible damage.
Yeah.
The park,
Still anything, I wouldn't think.
Who knows, this day and age.
but we did
I
have.
can't believe the other night we had a part stolen out of the new bathrooms, and I don't know who'd even know who it was unless they own one of them bathrooms,
Oh, what's the?
a part. And they took the panel apart, stole the part out of it and put it all back together.
I was like, what the heck?
We
Is
had
there
to pay
one
for the
staff
park
to
too.
them together?
Like Jamie was really thorough with getting all this goods.
Sounds like an inside job. almost, doesn't it?
Or somebody that has one of them and didn't wanna buy the part.
Or somebody wanted a really mean joke. Yeah, I don't know.
You think they're just vandals, they would put it back together.
Yeah,
That's true, yeah, that's a very good point. So.
it's dad taught him well in some ways.
Okay,
That's amazing, you don't know whether to spend money on cameras for like theft risk or vandalism. Yeah, well, there's a lot of different concerns, but
yeah.
The cameras is our answer to the cemetery. That's what I can tell people someday.
Well, you saw that picture, I don't know. I don't know how effective a camera would be unless if we can pay more and they can have
Or
more,
just have two to.
yeah.
So do we hire,
what's worse they can tell us if they don't have time.
They don't.
so do we have, like, we have electricity in that building, right?
Mhm.
Do we have Wi-Fi? 'Cause
Not right
My
now, no.
understanding is Connects, do they bring stuff to our facilities?
Not
Don't
yet.
know of any.
No. There's
I
not.
think we're
Wi-Fi.
supposed to, but maybe. I don't know, you could, if we have electricity, but there's no Wi-Fi, right?
You can get like a Wi-Fi hub from Verizon, but it's like $40 a month.
I have a camera, my cameras at my house are through. They'll actually notify you and set the parameters, so if someone goes there between certain hours, it'll text you.
Who's at the cemetery after dark, right?
I've got an idea, like, we got lots of hunters out here, let's put a bounty out.
I was thinking of
You guys
electric
find-
fence.
You guys find out who these culprits are, and
And it would be so
you got
much fun.
$1,000.
It'd be so much fun to do that. You wouldn't
It
have
would.
to open that much.
Yeah,
yeah, they'd be up
Yeah.
there every night.
I know some. I was thinking an electric fence and
Yeah.
really high voltage, and then when their car hits it, it just. You know, hey, why not? Ever stick your tongue out on one of those?
Yeah, if you read all the chaff design, man, those speed bumps, it just punishes the good people. They say that everyone slams on the brakes once they know they're there, goes over and then slams on the gas, and it really doesn't. It makes it slower right over the bump, but
No, I mean, you could. try it.
Speed bumps.
It would probably.
all the maintenance is more difficult or something. I don't think it solves the problem.
1,000 into your capital projects fund. And, so the transfers, the expenses 7, which all of that 1.7 is your class C road, or sorry, 1.1, sorry. That's all your class C roads money that we're spending down. So really our budget balances, other than we're spending down some of our class C roads restricted funds. So,
And that's with the transfer to capital 576. And that 576 will come up as we decrease the merit.
Yeah. that's just kind of where we now,
Thanks for explaining that, because that was one of my questions.
we want to spend down some of that restricted money first. So, so your capital projects, of course, we just talked about that transfer to capital projects fund. That will help, pay for later, but isn't that in the stormwater?
Yes, that's in the
Yeah, that's the
stormwater.
stormwater. So this is just capital projects.
Yeah.
That being said, we talked about the ARPA funds for that project.
Yes, yeah,
Is that going to be spent on that?
it
Or
can be.
we're not gonna lose that money, are we?
No, we have made it so that basically the way we could report that, and maybe Ryan can shine better light on this, but the way we reported it is that it's revenue lost money. So we have reported that we have spent it on revenue related things, but we're still reserving that money internally. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that we're not in risk of having to give that back.
Mhm.
We still have those funds and we're not so restricted.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is that the best way to
Yeah.
explain it?
It's good.
So,
And
and
speaking
then
of
that way we were.
ARPA, shout out to Ryan and Kemi and Morgan, they worked tirelessly. There was reporting that had to be done by April 30th, and we didn't have passwords, and so they really worked hours.
Had a few sleepless nights in here.
We're trying to get that figured out with the federal government.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
Jeez.
emails,
I
phone
actually had-
calls.
I actually have a little bit more hair on my head. 3
Really?
weeks ago.
Oh, yeah, honestly, both me and Ryan probably more than me, but we will, and Morgan, I mean,
We
We
would have to
just-
pay
yeah.
that money back.
Hmm.
if
we
they
were
couldn't-
trying to make phone calls and.
What rough number is that balance that you still have one ARPA?
160.
So it, in one fund, so we have it some, in your sewer fund of 52,153, and then in the stormwater, there's 165,381. So, but like I said, we're not really calling it ARPA anymore. We're gonna call it reserved internally. So that we.
So the one paid for that.
The one we are still working on, yeah.
You said in theory, you could say that money would provide an impact Setting the storm.
No, different.
No,
Yeah,
this is the
that's a
one
good
that
thought.
sewer station that deteriorated.
Oh,
It gets spent regardless, they just want to.
Fixing it's one issue.
And that's where we
bypassing
just
sewer water
reserved it.
fix,
Oh,
yeah,
so-
we're working with it for
Because then it
now.
brought us the baby.
Come up with a plan.
Well, appreciate it.
That was like a big few, so yeah,
Did we, the sewer line, that was gonna
Force main.
force main. West Haven deal that we talked about, is that anywhere in here, any money at all? Budgeted for that yet?
we have not budgeted for that yet because we didn't know an amount. for
But
that.
Jared, you could explain to him how we probably won't have to go clear 33.
Yeah,
Just
so.
4,000.
Yeah, so the force main that's in there for the vacuum station from 4,000 out to Rawson is. Calculated for build out of those 3 vacuum stations. We know at some point in the future, we're going to have another one. But it's really it's oversized for what we need currently. So our thoughts was to run down and tie into it, use some of that capacity, because I think. In the crystal ball, we're 20-30 years before we need to build the additional. Force main, and by then, we may have to rebuild them both, right? We don't know what'll happen in 30 years, but. I think it will increase our flow in that pipe for sure, and that will help us with the H2S gas issue. The sewage won't go septic and create that gas if we're moving it faster. I think it'll actually help our system and give us a temporary, but I'm thinking like a 20-30 year temporary. Connection there. What we will do with the sewer impact analysis is say. Excuse me, all these houses that come in and then are gonna use that force main. Need to pay for that in 20-30 years when we have to do the additional one. We need to build that into our plan. And charge accordingly so that when that has to happen, we're not scrambling for money, we'll have it set aside.
Impact fees studies really plan for the future. Help plan for the future. And make developers pay their impact on what you've got. So. And like Brian was saying, you could kind of in the theory with that storm. I always want to call it stormwater. Jared corrects me, storm
system.
drain, storm system, there we go, that's what I need to do. But anyways, with that, that ARPA money or that reserved money now, we're gonna call it, we could basically consider that money being spent on that impact fee. You know, cause we've got 160, it's just. If we wanted to, yeah, if we wanted to say that funds was going to
I
be
think we probably don't plan this meeting, but we need to have a good conversation about that 5,900 project, because. We didn't commit to do it. If we don't do it, I think we have some vulnerability if something happens to those houses in there. Flooding noise, and they say, well, you planned us to build this, and you never did fix it.
So what do we need to do to figure that out to get it going?
We pretty well have the plans done, everything, we need to sit down with the developer and. We did once, and he had a little pushback, but he said, I'll do what I said I would. And I think his abrasiveness probably wasn't. Warranted if we sit down with numbers and go over it with him, and he's supposed to put some numbers together on his end and. Just sit down and iron it out.
Because those numbers were not from the developer, they were kind of estimates from JUB, from what I understood.
Yeah.
So his will probably be different, I imagine.
Yeah, well, he's gonna basically estimate what his labor's worth,
Right.
because that's his commitment
Yeah.
to the project. And then we can. You know, back that into the project and say, okay. Portion wise, because that's his argument is, and I believe it's valid. We got an existing problem. We didn't want to add his development to an existing problem, so we said, we'll let you come into this drain, you have to help us fix it. But we can't make you fix it all, because it drains a lot more than his property, so we just. he's doesn't mind paying his portion, we just need to figure out what that is and. Massage it into the numbers and then, get it awarded. He'll obviously do the work, so it's not like we gotta bid it out to a contractor, we'll just have to. Decide, when we can afford to buy the parts.
That's the problem is definition of labor, materials, so we're materials, he's labor, but there's. Stuff in between that.
That are all part of.
The part of the project,
Mailboxes.
mailboxes, mobilization,
Mobilization was the other.
that kind of stuff.
And-
Yeah, we just have a conversation, I even figured it out.
And that is just kind of a,
Postal service, right, the mailboxes.
No,
that's kind of a. Just a rough numbers thrown at the project, and I mean, if we don't need that, we hope we don't, the project will be cost less, but we hate to. Those are the real numbers we're seeing in bids, and every bid has mobilization in it, so we don't wanna come in and say we can do this for 300,000, and when the bid comes in, say, never mind, it's 6. But we're including all those things in our estimate, hoping we can reduce that cost, but.
Right now,
There.
we do not have that in the budget.
Okay.
We have not included
It
when
was in the last meeting.
it was, but we have taken that out with the concern that when we decide on a price, then we'll just amend the budget for that. And we can do that, that's fine. That's
Okay.
what a budget's meant for. And the whole thing is that this budget is not set in stone. It is very much a working document. So we have to adopt on Thursday, a tentative budget, basically just letting the public know that we are working on this and we have a good plan. Do we make changes? Yes, we make changes, but the state says you need to let the public know that you have a really good plan in place. Then we may have one more meeting between then and the final budget and say this, we've implemented these little changes. And then we have to also have it available for public inspection. But the public inspection I don't believe it has to be the official one, right, Ryan? It just has to be the tentative.
It needs to be the tentative.
Yeah, it needs to
It
be
doesn't-
really
it doesn't
close.
have the right spirit about it if there are significant changes
Yeah.
from what's been
Needs-
presented to the public. Yeah.
Needs to be really close. But can we make some little tweaks? Yes. Does that make sense? So little tweaks are okay after the tentative, right? That's
Yeah.
my understanding.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and the tentative can be adopted as it's presented or adopted with a couple of modifications that are requested in the tentative meeting.
So when can we meet with that developer to kind of get that ironed out? I mean, cause I prefer to do it sooner than later if it's gonna give us some vulnerability.
Yeah, we've met with him once, and he's working on, the next
Phase.
subdivision that ties to it, and then his next phase is right behind that.
Okay, so he'll be there all summer.
But I think we want to get that secured and preferably completed before we lose all our teeth. If he's
Yeah.
completely done with his project, he's not gonna be near as workable as.
mhm. Especially if he's got another project hinging on it.
And I think those numbers Taylor came up with was what he thought was accurate of what a bid would be to do that project. And like Jared said, mobilization is when I would sat on the ramp committee, there was not one project that came through that didn't have mobilization. And I asked, what is this? Because I had never seen it before. And it's part of bids now.
Yeah. Basically to get all of the material and the construction equipment, everything on site, sometimes when you start moving heavy equipment, it's thousands of dollars to haul it. And that's generally the idea behind Moog.
Does he have all of his equipment there that he would need to do that? Obviously, does he have a
He
tractor?
hauls it in and out. I think there is one right now. It's had to tear all that curb out, but.
So maybe with him having that, we
Yeah.
wouldn't need as much mobilization or something.
And I guess the other thing we gotta determine, I think we just wanna get the numbers in front of us and be fair. I think if we ask for too much, we're gonna get probably legal pushback. If we are fair, I think he's willing to do what he said he'd do. But where do you draw the line on labor? Is Moog part of labor? Is it not? Is it just the manpower, you know, what, we're gonna have to figure that out, cause it wasn't defined originally, it was just said labor and material.
Yeah, okay. So we'd be okay, cause you had it in the last meeting. And the budget looked, I mean, you had it balanced somewhat, right?
Yeah,
So if we re-added in, we could make it work.
yeah.
Okay.
So we could, and where we were using that funds was the fund balance.
Is that a storm fund?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
It's in the stormwater.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Is that what you'd consider a minor change, or do you think we need to add that back in?
well, either you add it in my opinion, you add it in before the tentative budget, or you do a budget amendment. And
Either,
if you
either
do-
way, it needs to be presented in public.
Yeah.
hearing.
We
How
can
much?
have it In between the tentative and the final, too, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm
It was
off the
like
top.
800.
It went from like 1 million down to like 200,000, and when I reviewed it, and I'm like, you're forgetting about a lot of stuff, and so we took the numbers off the 5,500 job. Put them back in there, and we're about 8, I'm hoping we can get it for like 6, but. You know, the 8, I think is a little bit fat, but like I say, we didn't wanna. Say this is what it's gonna cost, and then come back and say, never mind, it's double that. And there's, you know, things are shocking how much contractors charge, but our 5,500 was well bid. There were a lot of contractors looked at it and bid on it, and we used the numbers for this from that, so. Should be fairly accurate.
There's a total of $900,000 of cash in the storm system fund. Give you an idea of what you have to work with. Real close to that 80,000.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, so if you do that and you do your impact fee, you pretty much have
Yeah,
kibosh that fund. And spent everything you saved up.
800 just the material.
That was kind of a total project, but not labor, not laying it. So I think we can trim some off of that for our hard costs, but yeah, it's a big pipe,
It's an expensive pipe.
36-inch concrete pipe. So
Concrete.
under UDOT road.
You know,
And then all the way out to the end of 59, and then we turned it and went a little bit west. It cuts through on an angle. And we got with that property owner and got an agreement that we can just go straight with it, so that it's cutting through the middle of his field on an angle. And then he gave us an easement to install it and maintain it, so it worked out good.
Okay, any questions on these ones? Get it?
And again, that 5,500 West project from 55 South to Davis. We have a HUD grant that should give some money to, but we don't know, so we need to put it in the budget, and then if we, we have secured that grant, but that's. We have to estimate what our project cost might be, and this was one that, when he came, I think it was applied for back, I think even with Corey, I think it's been you apply for grants with Wasatch Front Regional Council and UDOT, and they always are 5 to 10 years, so this is one that's already been.
so a grant has been awarded there.
The grant has been awarded.
Start sure how much.
So we have the grant from Wasatch Front Regional Council, the WACOG money. We have the money from HUD, which they refer to as the Blakemore. We think it should cover everything. But like with the 5,500 West, when we did up to 4,200, we ended up about 200,000 more than what we received because costs go up. So they bid them back 5-7 years ago, but then by the time you actually do the project, doesn't necessarily mean they're gonna be that price.
I don't think we have, I don't think we have any grants in the capital projects on budget, right?
I was just gonna look at that and see.
So typically project, and we may be able to get that section done basically with no out of pocket,
Yes.
but we wanna plan on some, just
Yes.
because there's always those bridges or.
are they widening? Is that what they're doing? Okay.
And
Not,
Yes.
improving to
Yes.
the right of way, so the actual asphalt will be wider, but we're not widening our right of way, does that make sense? Okay.
And then put the sidewalk on the one side's the walking trail, that will stay, but it'll be on the other side. And then when we talked to him too, because they're putting that four-way stop at 5,500, there might be some improvements made at that time. Maybe have like partial turning in order to enable for those that four-way stop. And UDOT's just paying for the four-way stop, you don't have to pay for any of that, but we maybe will have some responsibility, right? With that, so.
And it would make sense to build it into that project, when so either one of us or you will do it and then change it.
But we could find out exactly what that grant money was. I don't even remember now. When that was done with Ridge.
Yeah, Taylor would be our guy.
We would know. We can find out those numbers.
That's something we could modify to what's being presented here to get that grant income in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't. have that income in this.
Yeah.
So we didn't know what that amount was.
And that's for, what's the name of that
It's
project?
for the 5,500,
5,500.
yeah.
From 5,500 south to the Davis County line along 5,500 west.
Yeah, after the Davis, just to distinguish the south.
Yeah,
and the Richard
yeah.
Bennington.
So I have in the, in our capital projects plan or worksheet, I have a 5,100 project from 3,300 to 4,000 south. So that kind of specifies.
That's something different. That
Oh,
was
no,
different
that's
than the
right.
next one.
I have
yeah.
5,500 south, or 5,500 west, and then to 5,500 south to Davis, yeah.
And they, maybe we'll get started this fiscal year, maybe fall, maybe spring, didn't they say?
Yeah, they were a little less optimistic, but I think a lot of the design work's already done, so we're gonna be. I'm thinking probably next spring construction.
And there are some nice ramp grants coming in the projects fund too.
Yeah.
For bleachers, right?
Mhm. We've got bleachers, we've got several of them. So there's bleachers. A power upgrade, pickleball sprinklers,
Football sprinklers, did I hear?
Well.
well, the pickleball court sprinklers.
Yes.
Yeah, no one's out here.
And part of that's a parking lot too.
Oh, yeah,
To increase, make a little bigger parking lot there.
yeah. So we've got some good ramp grants coming in that are gonna be helpful. Okay, so the sewer fund. We've got revenue of about 2.2. We're estimating about 170 in impact fees. 1.9 is charges for services. And 172 is other income. A lot of that is your interest income. We've been allocating more of the interest throughout. And also part of that 1.9, you're looking at a chunk of that is the Central Weaver Sewer District charges as well. So whatever they've increased, their fees, we've increased that to the resident as well. So that's part of the increase, for sewer. The operating expenses, are at 1.9. So 75,000 of that is the impact fee study. And then we have 77,500 in system maintenance. And then we have 569 in equipment.
What is that equipment?
That equipment is a combination of a bunch of repairs that they're trying to spread out over 5 years.
Well, but that includes
For the
525,000 depreciation.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we also have 525 of depreciation, so really the net effect is 44,000.
Okay.
And then we have 316 in employees, which that will go down with the change. So, and that includes an additional employee. And so then we've got debt service payment of 530.
7,000 in a capital project there.
Mhm. Yeah, the 407,000 in capital project,
What is that?
that's changing out a bunch of the system that's about to fail.
Yeah, I'll like things listed underneath there.
Mhm.
Okay.
And I think we all kind of have
Oh,
gone through that and Is there any questions on that increase, what we're looking at there, unfortunately?
Just a little update, this Alan Bradley that we said's urgent. One of them broke down the other day. That's the computer that runs the whole shooting match. Luckily, Hooper Irrigation had taken one of theirs out and gave us the part out of it, and our guy came and got it back going, but yeah, they are in need of replacement.
Jimmy moved it. Okay. So that was fortunate on that, sounds like. So the net effect is a reduction of 658 in the fund balance. And our cash flow will go down 133, 110. We'll continue to kind of monitor that and keep looking at what we need to adjust rates each year to try and. But we did that study and figured out over the next 5 years how we needed to figure that and of course continue to adjust.
What's the timing on some of these capital projects? Are they this summer type work or is it?
He's had a kind of a chart that shows what we're gonna do in what year, quite a little.
By year, but I'm talking about the stuff, the 407,000 here. Is that gonna be this fall or?
As soon as we can, as soon as we got the funds available on some of them. And a lot of those things are long lead time, so as soon as we got the go ahead, we'll order them, but it could be
Yeah,
9 months where we see it.
okay,
But at least we're in the process and we've kind of tried to say, okay, over the next 5 years, Jared gave us a list of everything that's about to break. Which is basically a big wish list.
Is
So we
it,
said, how do we fix this over 5 years?
okay.
is it fair to say you guys see this a lot, that depreciation makes things look bad?
Yes,
But I heard somebody tell me once, well, that depreciation is the portion of the system you wore out in that
That's
time.
right.
yeah,
So it's almost like you need that much in maintenance.
yeah.
If you wanna stay equal.
So more so
It's a
that's,
double hit. You depreciate it and you pay for the maintenance.
Yeah.
That's the same amount.
Yeah, yeah.
pretty much. But that's what accounting standard says.
Well, the appreciation, the idea is that it shows the users that you need to be building up cash to cover for that depreciation, because you're gonna have to replace that system in some years.
Right.
But we're kind of doing some of that.
So in an
replacement.
ideal world, you would almost have the depreciation number be what you're tucking away or spending on
Yeah,
upgrades.
yeah.
Mhm. So like.
Depreciation does not account for inflation though.
Mhm.
Depreciation is based on what the system costs us. 17 years ago.
So more so I concentrated on this cash flow. And said, okay, what are we looking as a cash flow? Not necessarily what the expenses were, so our cash flow is going down by 133. But
Just
then,
all that, not bad considering there's 407,000 capital projects there.
mhm,
But what you're saying, that in an ideal world, if we're depreciating that amount of 525, we really should have 525 sitting there, because then you're saying that if we have to replace things. I mean, somewhere in here,
Let's
we've
start
got to
with-
build up some savings to
Really with
replace things.
I guess what I'm saying is with the 525,000, your cash flow would not have a decrease at all.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And I mean, in theory, yeah, you do want to kind of put that 525 away, but some of these repairs we're doing. Are basically replacing parts of that system
mhm.
to. Not. Have to replace the whole thing at once. So.
So what we charge for sewer, is it enough then to cover what we have to pay for Central Weaver, to put some away, to pay for maintenance and pay for our
We
bond, our
proposed
bill?
to increase in sewer rates.
what is that increase? Do you have a sheet somewhere?
Oh, you know what? Oh, right there. I have it right there. So current rates are at 66 monthly and we go up to 70. So yeah, basically $4 a month. Which Hooper's rate is only actually about $2.88 of that. The central Weaver is the other portion. So when I calculate things, I'm saying whatever. The central Weaver sewer portion of, whatever they increase for us, we have to pass that through. Just kind of like with the garbage, whatever our garbage goes on, we're just trying to.
So that's a 6% increase.
Mhm.
overall.
Yeah.
So. Okay, garbage, revenues, expenses, so right now. First garbage can is at $13.50, I'm proposing that we increase it to $15.50. And the additional can then would be $9. Or is $9 would go up to $10.50 and our recycling $7.50 and we go to $9.50.
And those revenues include the proposed rate increase, right?
So I did call and talk to Blake, who's over waste management, and asked him about this. And said, okay, what is your rate going at? Because I said, you don't give it to us until July, and last year we had our rates go up, and then you sent us a letter in July, and he said it's going at 4%. And he said, you can really guarantee every year it's going to be a 3 or 4%. He said some cities every year increase it by that much, some wait 4 years and then increase it 16%. So it's whatever you want to do, and I asked you, I said, okay, what if, we talked about as a city going out to bid, and he said, you can. He said, but I can tell you, usually if it goes out to bid, it increases, because right now we have our current contract. They're staying with our current price, they just increase it by the 4%. We put it out to bid, then they come back in and say, okay, well, it could be this much, not holding us to that amount. I'm not saying you don't put it out to bid. And one thing with waste management is they do provide the garbage cans. Some of the other companies, you do have to buy your own garbage cans, and they do replace the cans. I'm not saying we don't ever do that, but we're probably a little late this year to do that, since we already need to do this. But that's what he said, it will be a 4%, so I told Cammy that to add that in.
The $2 increase is more than 4%, but it looks like we're already doing catch up. That's
Catch
the
up,
reason.
yeah, because last year we weren't, by the time he sent it out to us in July, what we were charging for recycling wasn't even paying for what we were paying for recycling. But we didn't know that because we were going by the year before.
Yeah.
So
But if they do a 4% increase next year, then we won't have to do as big of an increase next year. We might be, $1 increase.
What about the
less
tipping
than that.
fees? Are those going up as
they,
well?
yes, I already gave that amount to
Okay.
Cammy, so that's in there. Which that's another thing, we can't do this right now, but one thing we talked about in staff meeting, and I brought up about her for some time having a green waste. So you were kind of, wasn't you that was saying about how much they said we pay for the, or was it you? Somebody was telling me that a big portion, maybe it was Malcolm, that a big portion of what we pay really in the summer, our tipping fee, is because of the grass and everything we're doing. That might be, somebody was barely telling me this, and they're gonna get me a contact. I think it was Malcolm now, I remember. It was Malcolm, and because Plain City does that, and the Plain City's not raising their rates because they have this green waste. But that really might be something we might look into sometime, and if you charge a little something, and especially non-residents, because West Haven doesn't have one. We don't think Clinton does, maybe that's not for this year again, but maybe for next year, we really should look into maybe,
Super have a place that they can put that.
well, we might,
We're gonna
you
teach.
know,
Be part of the process to evaluate.
Yeah.
We have to have some.
Yeah.
What's that one up on Monroe? There's a green waste.
oh, yes, by the cemetery.
Yeah, so.
Yes,
I
that's
wonder
Ogden's.
if Their rent cost.
In a nutshell, you're gonna reduce your tipping weight by
Yes.
reducing having grass clippings and
Uh-huh.
green waste in your regular garbage, but.
But you're gonna have, and eventually it might take a year or so, but then you're gonna be able to sell the material, because they sell it out there.
Yeah,
some,
Yeah.
which,
I think that's what we'd have to do like a little analysis and see how much we could
Right.
save and what the equipment would cost and manpower and see if it
yeah,
is a
Mhm.
net gain or if we
Yeah.
just break even.
It's not worth it.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so.
but it was Plain City that Malcolm said he'd get me the information. Theirs is open on Saturday for so many hours. They hire a retiree that comes and does it. And then, yeah, after so many years, then they sell, it breaks down. Some of it they sell for topsoil. I mean, but again, we'd have to evaluate all of that. Because I suspect our tipping fees will probably continue to go up every year because they generally do.
It's all now, isn't it?
Mhm. Which, you know, a lot of us are putting good manure in there, huh?
Yes, we
You just put those two words together.
Yes, I did.
are beneficial.
Yes, there we go.
But these are things we could look at in the future. Like I say, not for this year, but you know, for planning for the future, this might be something we could look into.
Okay, so I think that's okay with that. So the stormwater, we are just with the operating costs. We would look at just a rate increase of $1.75. Just to cover the operating costs of that, and that's all we looked at, so we would actually be 116 deficit, which is basically that impact fee study with that $6.75.
But you say we do have some money, we could do that one project, but if we do that, then we're pretty much depleting our entire fund in stormwater.
Between that and the 120, you're at. But the positive thing is if you do that impact fee study, then you'll have more money coming in as an impact fee.
Source, yeah.
Yeah, another revenue source. So it is hard because you have to spend the money to make the money, unfortunately. So, is that something we want to entertain?
We need to keep raising everything, but the only other option here would be if we raised it more than the $1.75, then we would have more money to be now going back into a savings,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
So.
Which, if we didn't raise it, if we didn't allocate wages here, because we did start allocating some wages here. If we didn't allocate wages here, then we'd have wages somewhere else. So then you're gonna have more expenses somewhere else. Whereas this is probably more realistic as to where we should be at. Does that make sense?
How
So
much wages are we allocating?
we are only allocating.
47,000.
Yeah, it's not. And considering that with the new impact or the new study, that's,
We have no idea what the audit, what we're gonna have expenses there. either.
yeah,
And so, Tammy, if it comes out, and I have no idea, but if the audit comes out and our expenses to fix up the audit, everything we need to, let's just throw a number of 30,000. And it could be lots more than that, right? Where does that money come from?
we gotta find it.
Yeah, it'll be more than that.
Mhm. And if that's the case, we may have to do a mid-year increase. A budget amendment, and we may have to increase rates mid-year, because there is,
We and Cammy are gonna look at something in the next week or so, the health insurance seems really high in the storm system expense,
no, it does look nice. That can't be right.
well,
We've gotta.
What do you
Right.
think? Do you think we should just raise it that, and then when we get back everything from our storm audit, if we need to raise it to get some money, raise it? I mean, it'll take a little bit, it's not gonna be an instant bill, but like even if we charge $10, so we have an extra, what is that? $3.25. $3.25 is gonna take a while to build up enough to pay that, Jared. Do you have any estimate of what our audit?
No, but I know one of the items that we had some discussion about, was they want the entire storm drain system electronically mapped, so basically on GIS. We've been really good at getting all the new subdivisions as they come in on the GIS map, but we've never done a project and done the existing. And she said, you need the existing. And I said, well, could we do that? Propose that we do it over a few years, because I said, that's a big expense, and she said, I'll think about it, so I don't know.
so what is,
Did you tell
what
her
is the
that's
bar,
not?
the criteria that GUB push assesses against the person's storm drain system? Like how,
It's not
what is,
GUB.
what is, But, so who is it that did the audit? Steve?
No, it's the
It's
state.
it's a it's the Clean Water Act essentially, and the EPA's handed it down to the state to administer to the municipalities.
And they're hitting everybody.
So we're an MS4, a municipal storm sewer system, and we have to report back to the state on how we're keeping the water clean.
Isn't Trump gonna get rid of the EPA?
And we kind of knew it would might
Yes.
eventually be our turn, you know, when they filled out all the paperwork this year and we signed it, it was like, well, we haven't been audited yet. We hope, and then,
They told us every city will get audited, and we knew we hadn't been yet, so we knew we're on the short list, but.
This
And
seems like a lot to ask.
I've seen other cities that are larger get audited and it's not,
I mean,
it's
at
not
the end
good
of,
for anybody.
at the end of the day, it's an unfunded mandate, but
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a big fight for us to fight.
yeah.
so can that audit money come from, because if we transfer this money over into capital projects. So because we need to, we can't have too much in general fund, then say if it's 50,000. Can you use capital project money to pay for storm audit? That would count,
we could do
okay.
that. We would have to transfer from capital into stormwater.
Mhm.
And
It's
then-
just a budget amendment though.
So back to the 98,000. What do you think that number is on there?
What was that?
On the health insurance, what
Isn't
is
that
it?
health
Oh,
insurance?
that's why I said we need to work.
Those are 50,000 times
Yeah.
two.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm just, let me pull.
So that would give us some money then to pay for the audit, wouldn't
It
it?
seems like that number, yeah, you're right.
It's like.
More, right, like 10,
Yeah.
10 should be 10 grand.
One too many zeros.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I can remember my password.
And if you put that, well, again, we're fine, we just, then we don't have any money. Like if we do that 800,000, which probably will be about 650,000, because we have the ARPA money to help pay. But then that wipes out that account.
yeah, because there's 900,000 there, so if the total cost is really 800,000. And then there's another 120 on the impact fee study,
Yeah,
then there's no cash flow. Yeah, and then you got the audit to deal with, too, on top of that.
One thing about that, I would there throw a number at what it'd be, but a lot of the same information we're gonna need for the impact fee study is gonna be what we need for the audit.
Oh,
Hopefully, we can kill two birds with one stone.
That would be
A
nice.
significant
that
amount
would
of
be
that.
good.
yeah.
Well, what would you recommend? Ryan, you've seen this, do you think we're okay just having our rate go to 675, or do you recommend that we should have?
I would just go to 675, I don't
Okay.
care, especially where they have increases coming from sewer as well,
Okay,
and garbage. Yeah,
and then we'll just see how we do throughout the year, and if something changes, then we could adjust it then.
yeah.
Okay,
Just a second. no,
4,
I
5,
have
6.
that.
$8 to $10.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's weird. I never really thought about it until we started looking, but you think about stormwater as a whole. There's every bit as much infrastructure as there is in a water or a sewer system.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And we're paying $70 a month for sewer and $6 for storm drain. But
Historically, it's been a bunch of ditches that go out the way,
Mhm.
it just is taking care of itself for so many years. And now we have to be accountable for it.
Yeah,
and then all the pipes that are in there for driveways and different things are 80 years old and rusting out. And, yeah, it's.
well, that was gonna take into account this 13 project list here we have here. And this is just storm drain projects.
So with that health insurance, it should be 98. I went through that. So yes, there was one too many.
9,800.
9,800, not 98,000. So we would have a decrease in 28,720. If we did.
It's normally.
It
No, I
was
swear.
probably mine, I'll be honest. I have no problem saying I screwed up.
That's it.
I'm human. So if we kept it at the 5. Let's would be about the same as last year, let's say. So if we kept it at the same, we'd be an $84,000 deficit.
So what's that 84,000? Do you know how many connections there are?
Well, I took. I think. What's the number of connections? I think.
How many bills do we send out? Jamie, do you know, right?
No.
I think it's about,
Stormwater.
everybody pays
So
stormwater.
it's like.
Probably
maybe
that
one
divided by 12.
residents,
Not the
something
number.
like that.
Sorry, how many?
I'm just guessing 3,100, give or take 200.
Yeah, so I'm saying about 33. So that's probably about right, yeah. About 33.
So what is,
That times by 5. I'm calculating. At
Can you just-
169,980.
so what is 84,000 divided by 33,960? The $2.50 would be the needed increase to cover the operating.
But that includes 120. So you need to take 120 out of there.
Just over a dollar this year, just to cover the expenses,
Mhm.
Yeah.
so we don't go in the hole.
But this is actually. Yeah. So, but if we kept it the same, we would be in the whole 84 with the 120. But if we increase it $1, then we're looking at. That decrease of 52.
So if we could trim that increase a little bit. What was that rate increase that would do that?
6, that was just a dollar.
$1.
$1?
Uh-huh.
What's on your PowerPoint slide, or was that proposed increase?
It was 6.75,
$1.75.
$1.75.
So can we cut it from $1.75 to $1?
That's what I meant to say.
Okay.
And then we're still a little in the hole, but not as much.
Yeah,
Yeah. So then that would put us just
like
like
give us just a
50,
little bit of
53.
breathing
Oh,
after that big project.
Agree with that.
Mm.
Okay, I'm great with that, yeah. Okay, let me jump over here.
If I understand right, that still is, we're still 53,000 deficit
Yeah, but that's after that 100.
after the study.
Start-
Yeah. Yeah.
But
And
that
we'll start
starts
to
to
build
give us-
that money back and then.
We'll start generating.
Should go faster because we have a larger fee now,
Mhm.
right? Is that, yeah.
Yeah, only on the new, only on
On the
the new
new
ones.
Mhm. Well, I'm gonna change that to $1.
Sounds good.
And that's it. Okay. So I think that pretty much sums it up. That was my last slide. Unless anybody has questions.
Back on page 3. General government.
Okay.
Are these on the new pages she gave us?
No. Oh, yes.
Yes, yeah. The new stuff, yeah.
So I did some call around to see what other cities pay their city council,
Mhm.
and it's pretty much on average about double what Hooper City is paid. So my proposal, tell me if I'm crazy. You currently make we're paid $100 per month plus $25 per meeting. Correct? That's what I understand, yeah. And those meetings are only city council meetings? Correct, they're nothing like this or whatever.
I think you're right, Brian.
Only city
I
council.
think you're
meetings.
right, and that there probably should have been some concession made for additional meetings, but I don't know that
Right.
there is.
And I only got $100 paycheck for April. I didn't go to either meeting, so anyway. That's what it is. So my proposal was to raise it to 200 per month. Plus $25 for every additional meeting. That we go to, budget meetings, committee meetings. Concept meeting, whatever kind of meeting would be. $25 every time we walk in the door for each additional meeting. If we're in attendance in person, that does not include a Zoom call. If we're here in person, then it's $25 additional per meeting. So that more or less doubles the budget for council. Probably closer to about 14, I guess, 12 to 14.
But we did take off some from the, you know, how when we were talking about the personnel, you know, you didn't want that additional, so there was some money there.
Mhm.
Get
So
a different
just-
formula.
I think the one, I just thought. Oh, we give yourself 100% increase, you know.
Well, I'm not doing percentages. I don't know what percentages even.
And honestly, if people saw what you guys do and the time you put in.
So I brought it up to Ryan that I thought city council should get paid. You really
That's
did
Yeah.
something.
It's a,
It's a goodness of your heart.
terrible, I don't know.
It's almost,
Too bad it's not deductible on your taxes.
it's almost a volunteer position. It
Volunteer,
really
that's-
is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is that too much? Do you think? Or what would you,
Well, you look at some of the other things, you know, it's not too much, because you know what they make.
and you have a different formula? I mean, you could go across the board and you say, okay, 400 a month. Regardless of how many meetings you go to, but I think. We have some on the council and we'll continue to have some on the council that won't come to the meetings for whatever reason. And I don't think they should make as much as the ones that are here
I
participating.
agree.
Right.
And to come is a lot more.
Or we could do 150 per month plus $50 per meeting attended. Whatever you think. I know it's gonna have to be a public hearing, but.
Yeah.
Well, but if it's part of the,
Yes.
if it's part of the budget, does there have to be a separate public hearing to do that? No?
No, they don't know.
No? I thought you had to have a separate
Public meeting for anybody as an executor, which council would be included in executors. To approve their wage. And it's kind of newer.
How much?
Danny's probably right.
I could be wrong. I've been wrong, obviously.
So,
That's what I,
About,
Because they make $50 a month.
is it just 50?
I think it's just,
Is it per meeting also?
I think it's 50 plus.
Like, so 70.
Yeah.
75.
yeah.
Some, I think they do a lot of work too.
Oh, yeah,
Some
they do.
cities though, their planning commissioner volunteer. Yeah, yeah, a lot of cities don't pay their planning commissioner out. I'm not saying we should do that because I don't agree. I think we should pay them.
And we've already doubled our budget this year from last year.
Sure, that minimal amount, you could have that much in income gas to get here, so
Exactly.
like you're making money off of it.
Is that why you want them?
Yeah.
And, you know, we talked about our 25-year plans or impact studies.
Oh, yeah.
This is literally level.
Oh,
You
yeah,
know?
at least. You
So
know,
I'm not
honestly,
being
it is.
greedy. I'm just coming up with everybody else.
Sure.
Oh, absolutely.
So maybe the plan commission gets our. You know, what we were.
100 plus 50, 100 plus 25. I
I,
mean, even 100 plus 50 is not a big deal.
be the one.
150 months or so.
you got 12, how much is in it right now? There was.
8,000, that's what.
We ended up increasing it because there might be some times when
Right,
they need
that's
to have.
your
it.
net,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm okay if, I mean, we don't have
Well, not that
that much money, but.
not that.
Pretty messy.
yeah, but when was the last time city council had a raise?
We've never had it.
Never,
Never.
never, and I.
Good.
I think that's something important.
So if we get 125 for the planning commission, that'd be 10,500 if everybody showed up every month. So even if you did 10,000, I think it could. The planning commission.
So 10,500 for planning, which would equal
We're at
100 a month and 25 a meeting. And then for you guys, you would do 200 a month and $25 a meeting or $50 a meeting? Or did you want to go 150 and $50 a meeting?
That's the same kind of, isn't it?
But it gives
Just-
more
I guess it
incentive
would be
to
an
have the
incentive,
meeting.
and that's to the
Yeah.
150 and 50.
50, that'd be incentive to, you know.
But I agree, like you said, Ryan, it needs to be in person. I really think that maybe sometime, I mean, there was that resolution made, which we need to, we talk about in another meeting, to do it Zoom, you know, when it was COVID. But, and sometimes, like Brian and I have talked about, maybe if we don't have a quorum, a Zoom might be an option, but I feel like maybe taking a little bit of advantage, maybe. of Zoom, you know,
One question just from a logistics, do you just tell Morgan? Like how many, she would know the monthly, but then if you went to a meeting, she didn't know about it, you just report
That was one
it.
of my questions too, is do we self-report or when Jamie or Morgan's usually they are.
I think maybe
Yeah,
just
we
make
just
a
work it
form. that you
Just a roster.
and it should probably be these meetings. I don't know that we would pay for, like, for instance, if you're on the fire district,
No.
we don't pay you to
No.
go to that, or pay you to go to emergency preparedness. We're talking city
City.
meetings.
Maybe or public notice, city meetings. And then that would be
Yeah.
clear.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Good. What about like a concept meeting or a development meeting, 'cause that wouldn't necessarily be public notice, but it's gonna take an hour or two
Or
there.
do a city meeting, yeah, just city meetings.
Just city
in general.
meetings.
That would be planned, because that wouldn't involve us. so.
well, it will with commercial, because the only ones that they are the one or two family.
Residential.
So it's rest, yeah.
So I come up with 15,000 for council. We go on that formula.
Brian, we'll do the public notice for Brian.
Yeah.
We'll find out.
That as well.
Cause yeah, now we're like, but I had heard somebody say that you do, so
I heard.
I'm gonna check.
It's changed,
Yeah.
Yeah.
let's check. Because
sure.
I'd rather check and
For
be
sure.
covered than not, you know, err on the safe side.
So what about
So-
executive, Sherry? It's like we did 9,000 this year, does that need to be? Increased or what?
I think it's like 650 a month, but again, like you, Phil, I don't want to be the one that say, oh yeah, giving her a raise.
So
Yeah.
9,000 divided by 12.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is, Corey,
So
you should
it's
just call it.
750 a month.
I think comes out of one
That's all
pocket. doesn't it, for,
So I think that the taxes is us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Which, so do we wanna do the executive?
750 a month.
I don't think you know, just the cash without increasing the executive.
Well, that's what we raised it to, from 5,000 to
Well, I don't think it was 5,000 last year. I think it always has been this 9. I'm not quite sure why it said last year it's 5,000. Because I think it always has been the 9,000.
Yeah. But,
I mean, if you wanted to go 1,000 a month, just do 12,000.
yeah, that's what I would think at least. I mean. I think I'm there with Ryan, that you don't, that's Ryan, that you don't increase one and not increase the other. I think it's legitimate to do both. So should we do that one as well?
Well, I can.
This will be a public hearing. Well, we don't know yet.
We don't quote me on it.
It depends if it's a public. hearing.
Yeah.
But can we find money in the budget to do that?
Well, we're already decreasing that merit, so.
Well,
We
But there's a transfer going to capital projects.
Yeah, and we'll
of
decrease that
$1,000.
too.
So there is money.
But we still, I would still like to leave them some merit, like didn't we talk about maybe
Yeah.
doing a 3% and a 3% merit and not have that additional?
Yeah,
If we're
Yeah,
under
just
the-
take that additional out.
that is
Yeah.
pretty good. Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
Because as we've just talked about, you really need to have some kind of merit for your employees, because then how do you ever incentivize them, say, hey, will you do this? You know, just like when they studied and did the, to do the notary.
Like my,
Yeah.
my employees is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
There's zero incentive.
so
Zero
that,
merit, zero nothing.
that would give a possible change of these amounts for your employees.
So you
I mean,
talked about-
granted, this is not right and this one's not right, but it
So
give,
in the budget, is there funds to facilitate a CDL class? Like,
Well,
That's
that's,
part of the merit.
that's what we thought part of the
I mean,
merit.
I know, but because we would have to pay for that class,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So is there, do we have some money?
That'd be
budgeted?
included in that 3%. Like you take an employee and you say, okay, here's what your incentives gonna be, we're gonna pay for this class for you
Yeah.
to improve yourself.
So there's money we can budget for that class.
According to the
If
3 and the
if we could,
3%.
yeah, well, it was about $1,200. It is, we could get the highway patrol to come here and do the class, $1,200 a person. To do that, but then there's a test. If they do an A, it was more about 125,000 for the test. If they do a B, it's 64,000 for the test. But we thought that what we could incentivize maybe is our ones that already had their A's. Then say, okay, because you have your A, your merit increases at, you know, $1 an hour or whatever, because you don't have to do, you already have it, so you maintain your A. And then we
Did you
could,
say 125,000 for a test?
You know.
oh, sorry, $125.
Okay, yeah, I was like.
I was gonna say, that must be overall, okay, yeah.
Wait,
I'm sorry. $1,200 for the training, $125
for the test.
for the test, if you do an A, $64 for the test, if you do a B. Yeah, I'm sorry,
Well, that is the our vehicles.
yeah, that's a good test in our truck, if they have to test in one of their trucks. Because I was gonna say it was a stand or a.
Well, we have a stand. But yeah, sounds like guys driving that Mac. And passing the test.
But we thought that might be a good incentive for them, and then again, we would have that build in that some kind of a contract, and they have to stay for 3 years, and I think we had a good time, Jared, if they leave after 2, they have to pay back so much, if, you know, after 3, then they don't have to pay back.
No, we just don't want them to better
Yeah.
themselves in the.
Right.
That'd be a good job, though, I got this.
And that's what we've been trying to look at, what kind of incentives can we make here at the city? You know, they do have Fridays, which is, but I mean, they still put in the hours, not saying that, but they have Fridays, and then if, you know, holidays, but what perks can we give them that they wanna stay? And that was what I mentioned about maybe those that have been 10 years, we pay all their insurance, I mean, not for this year, but maybe that's something we could look at. You know, what kind of perks can you do for employees so they're willing to stay?
We're talking about, so.
Yes, oh yeah, did we ever decide on that? That would be a total of either, not per employee, a total amount of 3,000 that would be divided
Yeah.
amongst the employees. Is that, I think that would be something good.
So we'd be going early from 9.
What do you
can
think?
probably
You're-
key
you're
that
the dirt
towards like
Which is-
safety too, and a lot of cities will include that in their safety program.
No,
No, 6, right.
Do you guys have in your shop, you have like eye washout stuff? And
Yeah, yeah, OSHA comes every once in a while, and does an
fire
audit.
extinguishers, all that.
One thing I thought would be like a cost, it's not too expensive, just. We have to figure out how to administer it, but just if someone does an extra good job on something, give them a $25 gift card to go eat or something.
I love that idea, because we used to be able to do that, and that was the best incentivizing I ever did in my career. Was just a gift card like that,
Yeah.
you notice something, you
Yeah.
reward it that.
Yeah, no, I'm just.
Hey, I saw you doing this, thanks a lot.
Yeah.
That goes further than any,
Yeah, and it's not like a permanent expense,
It's
it's
not
that,
5,000.
Yeah.
you know.
it's just a pool of $500 or whatever. and you
Yeah.
get some gift.
Yeah,
I thought it was a great idea that Jared had with that. But again, where would we build that in? Do you know, so we were talking, we said about that clothing allowance and maybe some money that they could do. Jared could have some gift cards or here in the office if there's,
We
with
could
that,
build that in.
if you did $500 and $25 gift card, that could you,
That's a lot.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what it's at.
You have to ask.
Go watch the Mammoth.
Mammoths, Utah mammoths.
Yeah, yeah.
Was that what they are, John?
Right, well,
Yeah.
Mammoths,
But yeah, no one wants to go to the basketball
No.
games anymore. You can go anytime.
So Sherry, the percentage increase for the council, if you did the equivalent increase, it would go from 9 years, would go from 9,000 to 15,000. To give you some idea of how the numbers will change.
yeah, that seems kind of high, doesn't it?
But knowing that, maybe 12,000 is pretty reasonable, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't have that too. Depends on the public.
Yeah.
What do we wanna call it? Employee
Yeah.
incentive, employee,
Reward, I don't know. Merit award or.
Does council get merits and awards? Gift cards?
Just for attending meetings.
how much do we wanna put in there? How much a guy?
Just, did you say 500? Is that?
100 a guy?
Well, gift
How many was that? 15?
Hold on.
Does that include staff?
Mhm.
You gotta be careful who's managing those gift cards. too.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's the
Yeah.
progress.
I would more so say that you give them like a clothing allowance for the public works guys to go get boots and stuff. And you say you turn in the receipts and get reimbursed because,
But what about the gals in the office?
well.
I mean, you can have break.
Any steel tool.
Well, though there could be some for the office, because you go to a lot of cities and they have like embroidered something that says who they are.
Sweater here, but yeah, I mean, something like that. Your guys out, you know, in the field. I'm just thinking from a tax or payroll tax standpoint, that technically gift cards can be.
Well, I was just
Problem.
wondering, could we just add it onto their paycheck, $50 on paycheck for incentive or something like that?
Just have like
Instead of
a
gift card.
business card thing that says, hey, you're qualifying, and then give it the mortgage and then she'll attack it
Yeah.
on. That'd be the same thing.
But if you do like a clothing reimbursement, then it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, but then you're.
I think the idea of it was the on-spot award that you saw them, they sent over and above their
Oh.
job and recognized.
Okay.
that it's
Yeah.
More of a more out thing than the money that it's worth.
We can't really just give somebody a pat on the shoulder anymore.
No, that doesn't work.
That's all you could do to me. No, I'm just kidding. Not for me doing that.
So if it is $500, that's
Um,
33. That'd be the opportunity for 2 a year for each employee, that's 33. Attaboys, if there's 15.
I mean, we get those cards for we get those cards for being safe from our insurance company, and I know they like them and appreciate them, and it's not very much, but.
Do you think that would raise a red flag with taxes or something?
Well, that's,
Mhm.
what you get from insurance companies, they give you a W-2 for that, right? That PEHV.
I don't think. I've
No,
never
that,
seen
this has to do with safety. Those ones you get, are you talking about? those
safety
smart-
reward, yeah,
Yeah,
we're
it's a
saying if you
safety
get
thing.
hurt, you don't get one.
Yeah, they have to go,
There's something on your team even.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, it's a safety.
But it reduces your liability insurance.
So I think that comes through the,
Trust.
yeah, the trust insurance.
So with gift cards, there's just there was a fraud recently at the Ogden School District. You guys heard about that? They were giving out gift cards to kids that were in need. But the secretary was taking gift cards and using most all of them. And then giving the gift card to the kid. So the kid and the poor parents go to Walmart and there's only $9 on this gift card. It should have $100.
I mean, we could have like them, the council authorizes 20 at this amount and keep a log of them and.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
have them sign
supervisor
off.
would say who
yes.
they gave it
You'd have to
to.
have a-
If you did $500 and you gave $25 gift cards, you get the 20 cards, so you did, you had the 20, and then Morgan would have to keep tracking. Mhm.
Even if you bought $250 at a time. Maverick gift cards, like 10 of them for $25 a piece or something.
Mhm.
And then when the employees get one, we just sign off.
Yeah. Yeah,
And the clothing allowance, if you did. I don't know necessarily you'd need to have. I think that Public Works for sure you'd want 200, because by the time they went to get a pair of boots. And maybe if even the office was even, I don't know, 100 or 50 or something, that they could at least. You know, I think, yeah, so if you had 2,000 or 3,000 in there, you probably need 2,000 just for Public Works, but. Maybe then if you put 3,000 in the clothing allowance, say. I don't
So
know.
do we wanna do both, or are we just looking at one, or? Would you guys- I'm looking to it.
Points we have. Okay.
No, we're only. Yeah, we're short, and we're helping to hire and then get the other sewer.
We'll see.
Was they like that? I mean.
I think so, yeah, it's. Seems like it appreciate
He's
it.
the one you got. Daughter.
So if you did 200 and you've got how many guys?
And
10,
$2,000.
2 grand, and then do you wanna do the reward of 500? So
Mhm.
basically 2,500, and then if we went to all your other employees,
well, the 500 would cover all employees.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
do 250 on Public Works. We're talking pennies now.
It boosts their outlook.
I put plus one
Yeah.
to get the other
So there's
sewer.
Jamie.
I still listed Luke because we have to replace.
Steph,
Yeah.
Monica.
They try to account for.
I got Malcolm, I don't know where he.
Oh,
yeah, let's put him in here.
so. Yeah, they do the office, something else, maybe.
So we have 11. If we get our new sewer person hired and we replace Luke, we'd have 11 in Public Works.
Okay,
So people just do 250 for the office and 250 for the people in the field.
yeah, but I'm just thinking the clothing allowance people wanna give. Enough there. And then the employee reward, did you wanna do the clothing allowance for your office? But maybe not do as much.
I would think so, because I think boots are going to be a big chunk of that money, aren't they, if they got a pair of safety
Pay like
boots?
$160 or something.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, they, they're buying them now on their own, even if it don't cover everything, it's that much more they
Yeah.
got, so. Still good.
Do you wanna give your admin staff the same amount, 200? Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, to be fair.
and
Probably
then
not.
250
What do you think, Jamie?
No comment.
It's not that easy when you're asking.
Sherry's still sick.
Yeah, I'm saying, yes, do it for him, but then when it's for you, you think.
You're just testing
Yeah.
it. Then passed.
Thanks.
It's not gonna-
Office, it comes with the desk, but you have to wear grass, meals.
You're getting new air conditioner.
Yeah.
I know.
You're gonna need a sweater.
Right.
New air
I have my
conditioner.
space heater.
Space heaters, that's what theirs is gonna be set on, sweaters and space heaters. And electric blankets, no. Okay. So,
So to summarize, we're changing the merit to 3% for all employees. And doing away with that additional 2% for certain employees, right? And we're gonna look into the grants income and the capital projects fund for the 5500 South project to get that on the budget. We're gonna look into the public notice requirement for mayor and council getting the raise.
Oh, and did we decide on planning commission too?
Mhm.
Did you get that in?
Right.
Mayor, council, planning commission. And we're changing the raise in the stormwater to $1 instead of $1.75. Right,
Mhm.
Not that we know yet, but if we could, it would be good if we could in planning commission to maybe kind of think about a alternate,
Okay.
because an alternate for planning commission, because we've not yet had one meeting that we've had everybody there for planning commission, and since we raised it to 7, and we have to have 4 there, and all 4, like if we have 5 there, we still have 4 there that vote. So we got a new planning commission, bless his heart, he said, I can't be there. So I think that'd be something to look at in maybe this next year's budget of having one alternate. So they would still get paid, they just would vote, but then again, it maybe wouldn't cost us any more, because if they're there, that means someone else isn't there, other than it would cost us that monthly.
For the 100 one,
Mhm.
well, it'd be $50, because you saved the 50 because somebody's not there.
Yeah,
They just get the alternate, get 100 and no meeting. Pay.
Unless they were there to fill in for somebody.
but we would still require them to come to the meetings, they just only vote if someone's not there,
Yeah.
but again, someone's. I mean, so they still might be there at every meeting and still do that,
That's
but then-
true.
So you'd have the full $50.
but then that means someone else isn't there. That's why they're voting, and that's what's.
And
that'd kind of be a tough position to fill. I think.
They have somebody,
Yeah, we already have somebody
okay.
that's interested that would come in and do it, and, but really, so far, we've needed it, because now we need that. And I think if we end up sometimes going to 2 meetings a month, we're gonna even be other people that can't come, I think.
We could do that.
Did you figure out on that? I guess that was, you end up going to 2 meetings a month, that could double your planning commission.
Yeah, we're gonna keep it.
Hopefully it won't be every month. I think it'll just be if the time.
It might be like some occasions, but
Mhm.
I don't anticipate every month.
No, I wouldn't think every month even.
So we said 50 meeting. Which we could just leave it in there as a budget, and if the council decides on approving that additional, then we've at least got the money there to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this just puts it in the budget, they still gotta make the change.
Yeah. Yeah, this just gives an earmark in the budget, so we have the money to make change.
were you gonna change the council? Line?
No, I thought I did, sorry. No, I wasn't even doing it. Ryan's gonna smack me, it's okay, Ryan. Like I told Bryce last time, I'm here all night, 15,000. And
12 for the executive.
I changed that, maybe.
That's it.
Same, there we go.
And then the current estimate for the executive,
Yeah.
change that to 9. Need to look and see where Sherry's wages have been posted, because they.
They're obviously not there. Yep.
entirely-
Like I said, there's a lot of corrections. we need to make in that section. Or updates. The overhaul of July 1st.
What's line N for
Oh, sorry, let me jump back there. Which line?
Nancy? We're calling Nancy, what does that represent?
This was just some calculation I used. Oh, that was your June 30th doubled to try and help me come up with your estimates. So that's not correct.
There's just some
Some
in-house
calculations.
working
I
that
did.
come up with
Yeah.
what this kind of your estimates would be.
We've got lots of calculations we try to use. So that,
Look, there are some hidden columns too,
yeah,
so.
so I'll see like I added up all your attorney's fees. And I was telling Bryce this morning that I went through while I was here the other day, all the JUB invoices and looked at which ones were actually for stormwater and maybe should be allocated there.
Was that hard to tell?
It wasn't too bad to tell,
So we're
honestly, so
probably
we
do that
just
going
need to,
forward.
yeah, we need to
Or somebody
have some
said,
training.
somebody
We
may-
talked about, we're gonna do some training in-house after we get this budget set, then we're gonna talk, and Jared, you'll be in that training. FYI, so that we know where things need to be coded at and where they need to be put correctly based on this budget.
GUB pretty much outlined it, because I was like, when I signed off stormwater, and it was like 30,000, or not that, it was about $30,000.
Yeah, I
So
think
it
it
was
was
quite
like
a-
41 is what I came up with the other day. When I was here.
Well, one thing too, I think we need to make sure we're doing, at one time they were pretty, the invoices were pretty generic, and then
It's not you.
Mayor Green made
And
them,
that's what I'm trying to do.
put them to every subdivision, everything, and I think we're kind of faded off that a little bit, but that's good, because we do collect review fees,
That
and
was.
that
one
should
question,
pay
yeah.
some of that
Mhm.
JUB. It's a lot of their times reviewing subdivisions, well, that should be developer paid.
Yeah.
We need to make sure that happening in our budget.
That was one question
But
that
a lot
Candy
of that-
this morning is like, how do we know JUB is not,
Oh.
you know,
Yeah.
not that, maybe not on purpose, but just.
Well, we just want to
Yeah.
count it.
Right. We shouldn't be paying for a developer, meeting.
Yeah, which some cities actually send out a separate invoice for those.
Yeah.
Like they get that, they pay it, they send out an invoice.
That's why it'd be nice to have an itemized JUB bill like this. I think it does, because our engineering is skyrocketing.
And I think it's just, so we collect 1% at the beginning, so $1 million development, we pay $10,000. And I think we would have to use that before we started invoicing them, or it would be double the.
But Malcolm should track that. You know,
And that was,
Make sure we're collecting it, I'm not positive that we're collecting it.
that was the question I had, that I asked, so when they come in and do a concept conference and our engineer comes, are we charging them enough to cover that?
Yeah.
If we're not, then we need to, because I asked, and they said, yes, there is built in a fee, but is that fee enough?
mhm, yeah, so really all those JUB invoices should not only get approved and stuff, but Malcolm needs to look at them and say, yes, this is for the subdivision, I need to track this on a separate spreadsheet as to this is for that subdivision. You know,
Well, that was a good idea Corey had when you meet him and all that.
Yeah,
So
and
we
we'll
need
have
to
to
get back.
sit down with him and tell him I need it that way, and I know he was serious, he rejected a few of them, and they had to go back and reclassify them before he pay them. So. Maybe that's not that I don't think they're opposing, I just think we wanna be able to account for where it's going and why, and if we need to increase a fee because we're not covering it, then it's good
Yeah.
information.
it is very good information, because you don't need them. Okay. Okay, I'll make the changes and then get it out to you sooner than later, will probably be Friday or Monday.
Oh, so the last one too, I know Thursday we talked about the attorneys, so. I'm still pretty convinced we keep it at 25, so we stay within our ordinance, so we don't have to do a RFP because as a council, we rescinded that.
Okay.
What does your ordinance say about? It says if your estimated is 25,000, you don't, yeah, it doesn't have to go out for bid, basically, that somewhere in here.
That's good, that it's a 25, our.
Yeah,
It's
so,
relevant.
I mean, yeah, our attorney's fees went up, but, it wasn't.
Do you know, I haven't been that involved in this, but I know there was that pretty serious litigation that would have racked up a big bill that wasn't necessarily our.
They got
City
billed
attorney.
separate, I mean, it was paid to a different firm, but on Transparent Utah, I think it got lump sum in there.
I see.
Mhm.
Yeah, that would have been not a normal. Hopefully.
When
But
was the
these,
last time
these
you
are our normal, yeah,
You know, probably,
It's 25,000 makes sense 15 years ago.
yeah.
Yeah,
But we've stated that in the past.
well, except for we have, though, Ryan, because remember when Tammy was going through the budget, we had attorney in general, we had attorney in sewer. So we had money allocated in two separate places. So when you look at what we've paid for our, that's what I was saying Thursday in our meeting. We have already spent more than 25,000 this year.
Mhm.
So we can't go back and say we want to be less than 25 because we've already spent more than 25 and we still have May, June and July, and that could even probably include April's bill.
So without them coming to our meetings now, how much does that save us? Well,
But they've also increased their price.
how much were we paying per meeting?
I don't know.
By the hour, if they're charging
By
by
the
the hour.
$100 an hour,
What's that?
$100 an hour, yeah.
125.
Half of what-
So it could have been a $400.
Once you guys
But-
go back to
But
that.
there's going to be times when we're
No,
going
because
to
you
need
go
them to
back
come,
to
so I don't think we can just count on them
Build that
never to
price.
come. Because Brandon still comes to planning commission and there will probably be times when we need Reed to come. And really, to even have in a budget 45,000 for an attorney is about half of what most other
Yeah,
cities
it is.
pay.
in our prior year estimate, or actual is 40,000. Maybe we had some litigation, but.
I think they build about half of it, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't. I don't ever see cities put their attorney's service up to bid,
You know,
don't. So I wonder if there's a difference in the ordinance between requests for proposals compared to requests for qualifications.
Cause I know, you've said JEB's proprietary because of this, well, we could probably use the same argument with our attorneys, they've been with us since day one.
Yeah, they've got the
Except
history.
for the state auditor said we
So,
could.
I don't think that,
Who was that?
Seth Overson, find out.
I'm gonna talk to Seth.
yeah, I don't know if you got the full story or not, I think you got some misinformation. And there again, and they wouldn't have bothered us unless somebody put out
Yeah.
a grammar or whatever they did. You know, they would, that's not their job, is to come police us, so I think. And honestly, I'd really hate to lose Brandon and Reed, you know,
Yeah, they're very valuable.
Well, I think Reed's pretty much retired, so I think it'll
well,
be
not
Brandon.
yet. I mean, he's still there, he's committed, I think, for a little bit longer. But
He told me he would, this is what he told me when I went and met with him. He's happy to help us on ordinances.
Mhm.
He wants all of our calls and emails addressed to Brandon. And if we need him to come to a meeting, he's willing to,
Sure.
but he's not planning on coming.
Yeah.
He's probably just starting to transition.
So if he does, cause he's been coming to every meeting, so that cost would go down.
Well, Reed's gotta be 80, doesn't he?
oh,
God,
Seventy.
he's like.
Seventy,
No, he's gonna
78
shoot you,
or something.
that's like that.
He's
70,
78.
so.
Well, you know, we always looked when you were younger, just.
Reed's pretty phenomenal. He's the one that started shoving that justice.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess he was on Donahue or something back in the day, like, well, because of that,
Oh, really?
you know, that's what I heard. He's got a pretty good resume and reputation. Anyway,
Well, I still think we need to leave that much in the budget because I don't really see us ever having our attorney go less than that, because they haven't. I
that's
mean,
fine, as long as you're not doing RFP, then I'm okay with it.
well, in order to not have to do an RFP, we need, like I
Maybe
said, we
not.
could change it.
Maybe not.
We could change
There's-
our procurement,
Let's investigate the procurement policy.
yeah,
And maybe just update it.
yeah, that's what I brought up at the very beginning of the year.
We maybe like some council there, I think we ought to update that in general. Not just for attorneys, for all persons, 'cause
Yeah,
there's just
yeah.
some area that
Like
no
the
one really
5,000.
knows. When are we supposed to come to the council? Is it okay if it's in budget? Is it not? I think we just want to make it crystal clear so everyone's on the same page.
This isn't like 5,000.
5,000. And then I brought that up at one of the meetings and they said, well, no, as long as it's in the budget. And that's what we've talked about. Well, if it's in the budget, do we not have to? Or we still should, because really, we have money in the budget for a furnace. But this was over 5,000, so I felt like it should come to council. But if we go by what I was told at one of the meetings I brought up, we don't. If it's in the, if we have money in the budget, well,
Sounds like we need to iron out.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't
we
think
do.
it's crystal clear, we
We
just
need to
need to
iron
make
it
it
out.
clear, so everybody's in that good, I don't.
Yeah.
Cause it's not like, I don't think you have any staff trying to do anything wrong, but they just, don't know anymore. There's no communication.
yeah.
And like you said, that some of those dollar amounts are 1980s, I mean. A truck part now can be $5,000, our
Yeah.
power
I
bill
was
is more
thinking
than
this, Templeton Foods are-
$5,000.
the tariff on the steel inside those foods.
So the state procurement is 25,000. That's where that comes from, but our purchasing policy of over 5,000 is probably something we could adjust.
Yeah.
Because that's what the state is, and so we follow the state.
Is that what the policy,
It's 20.
city's policy says, is to follow the state's?
Uh-huh,
Okay.
and it's 25,000,
Okay.
but as far as our purchasing policy of the $5,000, that's what we need to verify what we're going to do. Because if it's less than 500, just, it could be something in-house. If it's 500 or less than 500, 500 to 5,000, the mayor can approve. Anything over 5,000 needs to have city council approval, but that's the question. Well, then if it's in the budget, do we, like Jared said, we sometimes have electric bills that are more than that.
Right.
And I
So
think there's a difference too, we can iron it all out in the ordinance, but.
Yeah,
Reoccurring power bill is different than buying something that's a new asset.
yes.
And, if you go off of what it's saying, you guys should approve every garbage bill.
Yeah,
You want to do that?
yeah.
I mean,
Well, I haven't seen a single thing for approval in 10 years, and so we haven't been following the ordinance to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
That's what I brought up last year when I was first mayor. I brought it up in a meeting and I was told, nope, you're wrong. As long as it's in the budget, you're misinterpreting. And I said, okay, because from what my interpretation was over 5,000, then it should come to council. But anyway, so we did.
Yeah, like this situation right here, yeah, it's in the budget, but that money was budgeted for something else.
Well, it was budgeted for the
Yeah,
building.
the building.
Yeah,
So, yeah, it's in the budget.
yeah. So that's kind of
It'd be
great.
nice to know.
That's what I
Yeah.
think too. I think you should.
I think if there's something like it's, then yes, we should be involved in who gets the bid. And like some of your road construction projects where you come to us with, hey, here's some bids, which one?
Certainly better than it's on the side.
Give us a recommendation.
Right.
I have one.
Okay.
So,
And Nate Tolman did call me because he wanted to check and said Dave does have a license and is insured. So there's not a problem with going, we do have to get a permit, but we do that we'll do it, for this, they don't charge the city for a city, but we'll get a permit and everything.
It's in the budget.
If we're okay with that.
Computer.
If it goes to the bids office, it comes in, absolutely, we should do it. But it's fine, positive, but it's in the budget.
Well, it was over 5,000, so I thought.
I'm just making it clear.
And then we want to increase that in our own thing there. So are we okay? If I go ahead then and have Dave come do our furnaces?
I'm okay.
So, $1,200 rebate comes off of that.
Comes out of 39.
Nobody else mentioned that.
No, but there could have been. The only other one that did was Absolute, and that was if we did oh no, I can't remember what it was called, but we had to get solar panels, and they called it a heat pump or something, but we're not going to get solar panels here. And then he said there would have been a rebate.
That seems low for 4 furnaces and 2 air conditioners.
Yes.
Hold them to it.
$1,200.
Each?
No,
Just says total.
eligible for a $1,200
Should be
rebate.
Oh. Yeah.
Well, maybe if it is, but that's just what he said to me.
I think that really should be added, especially when you get it from Rocky Mountain and Simmons. You get 2 rebates.
There are, because my son just had one by one of these guys right here. And he got quite a few,
Yeah.
I've got some rebates, I can't remember.
You got a rebate on his taxes, right?
Well,
Probably.
these are rebates, not tax credits, that's what
Yeah.
it says,
It's
right?
just cash rebates.
It's just a rebate. I can't remember now which one it was from.
Energy efficient equipment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so there's those and then there's the tax credits if you're a taxpayer.
See what-
Let's see, this says all three quotes qualify for a $300 rebate from Enbridge Gas Company.
And Rocky Mountain Power should be on top of that.
Yeah, he doesn't say anything about Rocky Mountain Power, but we could check.
Definitely check.
But if they're gas, well, it would be for the, we can find out. We can find out. Okay, 1 minute, and that's okay. We're just going to tell
Claim the rebate for themselves and pocket the money.
Any other questions? We kind of went over our hour, didn't we? But this was. Yeah.
Not 4.5 this time.
Oh my God.
Okay, I think these were some good things though, and then if we just find out if we need to do the public hearing.
Yeah.
for raise on that.
For sure.
And if we do, it'd be nice to just do it in the same meeting as the public hearing in June, right?
For
Oh,
sure.
yeah,
It's the 17th,
Yeah, separate.
Yeah.
because we're doing one on a Tuesday instead of a Thursday because of the Juneteenth.
we're hoping on a
Which-
Tuesday that
yeah,
maybe our,
that's
maybe.
Well, please do that.
It's the 17th.
I think hopefully it wasn't the same as
I'm
the,
pretty sure.
what week of the month is your,
Second Tuesday.
Okay,
and this one I think is the third.
So,
I think it's the 3rd, yeah,
We were looking at that.
yeah. Because it was either that or we were trying
Can we not hold a meeting on the 19th? I'm-
17th.
It's kind of a- it's far, but like you're required to have a be on holiday.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
Now it's.
It's forbidden.
County has to work that day.
Feel free to call me that day.
It's fine, my
After work,
flight goes
I'll
holidays,
stay.
my phone will ring all day. You might as well be at work, because no one else, you're like, we're off today, it's Juneteenth.
Yeah, it's actually nice on those days because you get a lot done. Everybody needs your off.
Okay, anything
So-
else? Well, thank you, Ryan and Cameron for coming and Jamie for having to be here and Jared and Bryce and Ryan thanks for coming.
You didn't put all my Trump comments in there, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Capital letters.
Okay, did we stop? We done?
Do you have to have an adjournment or not?
No. We don't.
Good answer, but she wants to hire. She goes to the meeting, but she-